Blood dripped onto the wooden platform beneath Evelyn Mercer's bare feet as the crowd roared with laughter. She wasn't a criminal, just collateral for her brother's debts. The most dangerous man in the territory, Silas Granger, stood below with a smile that promised hell. Then a widower with kind eyes risked everything he owned to save her, and his mute son spoke for the first time in a year. What happened next would either destroy them all or prove that even people sold like livestock could fight back and win. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. The desert sun had no mercy that Tuesday morning in Redstone Hollow. Evelyn Mercer knew this because she'd been standing in it for 3 hours with iron shackles cutting into her wrists, while men she'd taught their letters to just months ago pretended not to recognize her face. The auction platform smelled like old tobacco and something worse, desperation, maybe, or just the particular rot that settles into wood when too many people's lives have been bought and sold on top of it. Evelyn could see the school building from where she stood. 23 children used to sit at those desks every morning waiting for her to arrive. Now the windows were dark and the door was locked and she was wearing her brother's debts like a noose around her neck. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced. He wouldn't look at her either. Female, 26 years old, can read, write, cipher, no known illnesses. Someone in the crowd laughed. Evelyn didn't look to see who. Her brother Marcus had disappeared 6 days ago with $3,000 that didn't belong to him and a horse he'd stolen from the livery. The men he'd borrowed from had come to Evelyn's boarding room that same night with torches and questions she couldn't answer. When they'd searched her things and found nothing, they'd dragged her to the town magistrate anyway. Family debt transfers, the magistrate had said, not meeting her eyes. Frontier law. Someone's got to pay what's owed. I didn't take anything, Evelyn had said. Doesn't matter, you're kin. That had been 6 days ago. Now she was standing on an auction block in the town square, while the banker who'd once called her an asset to the community tallied bids in his leather notebook like she was a mule. The first bid came from Samuel Porter, who owned the dry goods store. $50 for her labor. I need someone to manage inventory.
60, countered Mrs. Halloway, the seamstress. My hands aren't what they used to be. She can sew. Evelyn's lip was split from where one of the debt collectors had hit her when she'd tried to run. The blood had dried crusty and tight across her chin. She could taste copper every time she swallowed. 100, called a voice from the back. Evelyn's stomach dropped. The crowd parted slightly, and there he was, Silas Granger, standing beside his carriage like a king surveying his kingdom. He was 53 years old, owned more land than any 3 ranchers combined, and had buried 2 wives under circumstances nobody asked too many questions about. His suit was tailored. His boots were polished. His smile didn't reach his eyes. $100, Silas repeated, and I'll settle the remainder of her brother's debt as well. $3,000 in total. The auctioneer's face went pale. That's generous, Mr. Granger. I'm a generous man. Silas stepped closer to the platform. His gaze traveled up Evelyn's body slowly, deliberately. Besides, I could use someone with her. Refinement. A schoolteacher would be useful in many ways. Evelyn's hands started shaking. She clenched them into fists so no one would see. Any other bids? The auctioneer asked. His voice had gone quiet. Silence. Men looked at their boots. Women studied the sky. Even Samuel Porter, who'd started the bidding, took a step backward. Going once, 3,500. The voice came from the edge of the square near the water trough. Evelyn turned, along with everyone else. A man stood there holding the hand of a small boy. The man was tall, lean, weathered in the way of people who worked outside every day of their lives. His clothes were clean but worn. His face was sunburned across the nose and cheekbones. The boy beside him couldn't have been older than 7. Who the hell is that? Someone whispered. Ethan Hale, another voice answered. Runs that cattle ranch north of town. His wife died last year. He can't afford that bid. He just made it, didn't he? Silas Granger turned slowly. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air, something cold and dangerous. Mr. Hale, Silas said pleasantly, that's a substantial sum. Are you certain you have the means? Ethan Hale walked forward through the crowd. The boy stayed close to his side, silent and wide-eyed. When they reached the platform, Ethan pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket and handed it to the auctioneer.
"Deed to my ranch," Ethan said. "It's worth $4,000. I'll put it up as collateral."
The auctioneer unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. "Mr. Hale, this is everything you own." "I know what it is. You'd risk your entire property for—" The auctioneer gestured vaguely at Evelyn, seemed to realize how that sounded, and stopped talking.
Ethan looked up at Evelyn for the first time. His eyes were gray-blue, like storm clouds over the mountains. "Yes," he said simply, "I would." The crowd erupted into noise, laughter, shouting, disbelief. Silas Granger stood perfectly still, watching. Then the boy tugged on Ethan's sleeve. Ethan bent down and the boy whispered something in his ear. Ethan's expression changed, surprise maybe, or something close to it. He straightened up slowly. "What did he say?" the auctioneer asked. Ethan's jaw tightened. He said, "Please don't let him take her." More laughter from the crowd. Someone shouted, "The boy's got more sense than you do, Hale." But Evelyn wasn't looking at the crowd anymore. She was looking at the boy, who was staring directly at her with enormous dark eyes filled with something that looked like recognition.
"Those are his first words in over a year," Ethan said quietly. His voice carried anyway. "My son hasn't spoken since he watched his mother die. Not one word. Until now." The laughter stopped. The square fell into the kind of silence that feels like held breath. Evelyn's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Mr. Granger, do you wish to counter?" Silas Granger smiled. It was the smile of a man who knew exactly how much patience he had and how little he needed to use right now. "No," Silas said softly. "Let him have her. For now." The auctioneer's gavel came down. "Sold to Ethan Hale for $3,500. The crowd began to disperse immediately, already whispering, already turning this into the story they'd tell at dinner. Evelyn stood frozen on the platform while the auctioneer unlocked her shackles. Her wrists were raw underneath, ringed with bruises. Ethan climbed the steps of the platform. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the gray starting to thread through his dark hair. He held out his hand. "Can you walk?" he asked. Evelyn nodded. She didn't trust her voice. "My wagon's over there." He gestured toward a simple flatbed wagon hitched to 2 horses. "It's about an hour's ride to the ranch." She took his hand. His palm was calloused and warm. When she stepped down from the platform, her legs almost gave out. She'd been standing for so long, but he caught her elbow and steadied her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." He said it quietly, not unkindly. "You don't know what you're walking into." The boy, Micah, she remembered, took her other hand without being asked. His fingers were small and sticky with something, probably candy. He looked up at her and didn't let go. They were almost to the wagon when Silas Granger stepped into their path. "A word, Hale," Silas said. Ethan stopped. "Make it quick." Silas glanced at Evelyn, then back to Ethan. "You've made an interesting investment today. I hope you understand the terms of frontier debt law. Her brother's theft was from multiple parties. The magistrate settled the public portion, but there are private creditors. Men who don't go through official channels." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying her debt isn't paid. Not entirely. And when those men come calling—" Silas smiled again. "Well, I hope that ranch of yours was worth the gamble." He tipped his hat to Evelyn, climbed into his carriage, and rode away. Ethan stood very still for a moment. Then he exhaled slowly. "Come on," he said. They walked to the wagon in silence. Ethan helped Evelyn up onto the bench seat, then lifted Micah up beside her. The boy immediately pressed against her side like a puppy seeking warmth. Ethan climbed up on her other side and took the reins. The horses started forward. They rode out of Redstone Hollow, while the sun climbed higher and the desert heat wrapped around them like a fist. Evelyn watched the town disappear behind them and tried not to think about the fact that she'd just been sold to a stranger. Tried not to think about Silas Granger's smile or his talk of private debts. Tried not to think about anything except the feeling of Micah's hand still holding hers. "Why did you do it?" she asked finally. Ethan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "I saw you standing up there," he said eventually. "Blood on your face.
Chains on your wrists. And you weren't crying, weren't begging. You just stood there like you were daring every single one of them to look away first. He paused. My son saw the same thing I did. Maybe that's why he spoke. Maybe he recognized something. Recognized what? Someone worth fighting for. Evelyn's eyes burned. She blinked hard and looked at the horizon. I can work, she said. Whatever you need. I can cook, clean, mend. I taught school for 4 years so I can keep books, manage accounts. I'm not useless. I never said you were. Then what am I supposed to do? Ethan glanced at her. Survive, same as the rest of us. The ranch appeared in the distance about an hour later, a collection of weathered buildings clustered around a main house that had seen better days. The paint was peeling, the fence posts leaned at odd angles, but the land itself stretched out green and endless, fed by a creek that cut through the property like a silver thread. It's not much, Ethan said as they pulled up to the house. My wife used to keep it nicer. I've been behind on things. He helped them down from the wagon. Micah ran ahead to the porch, then stopped and waited, as if making sure Evelyn was following. Inside the house was dim and cool. The furniture was simple, a table, some chairs, a stone fireplace that took up most of one wall. Everything was clean but stark. No curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floor. It looked like a place where someone had stopped caring about comfort and focused only on function. There's a room in the back, Ethan said. It was supposed to be for, well, you can have it. He led her down a short hallway to a small bedroom. The bed was made with military precision. A single window looked out over the fields. I'll bring your things in, Ethan said. Then he paused. Do you have things? No. Evelyn's entire life had been in her boarding room, and the debt collectors had taken all of it to sell. Ethan nodded like he'd expected that. We'll figure it out. He left her alone. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. She was in a stranger's house. She legally belonged to him now, in the eyes of the law. She had no money, no possessions, no way to leave, even if she wanted to. And somewhere out there, Silas Granger was planning something. A soft knock at the door. Come in, Evelyn said. Micah pushed the door open. He was holding something, a wooden horse carved and painted. He walked over and held it out to her. For me? Evelyn asked. Micah nodded. She took the toy carefully. It was beautiful, detailed work. Someone had spent hours on it. Did your father make this? Another nod. It's wonderful. Evelyn turned it over in her hands. Thank you. Micah climbed onto the bed and sat beside her, not touching but close. He pointed at the horse, then at her, then at himself. You want to play? Evelyn guessed. He nodded enthusiastically. So they played. Micah showed her an elaborate game involving the horse, a tin soldier, and a piece of string. He didn't speak, but he made sound effects, galloping noises, battle cries, the rumble of distant thunder. Evelyn followed his lead, and for 20 minutes she forgot about everything else. When Ethan came to find them later, they were both lying on the floor making a fortress out of books. Dinner, Ethan said. Micah jumped up and ran past him toward the kitchen. Evelyn started to gather the books. Leave them, Ethan said. He hasn't played like that since before his mother died. What happened to her? Evelyn asked, then immediately regretted it. I'm sorry, that's not my business. Fever. Ethan leaned against the doorframe. Started in the morning. By midnight, she was gone. Micah was with her the whole time. He held her hand while she... Ethan stopped. Started again. He hasn't been the same since. I can't imagine. He asked about you, before. At the auction. He pulled on my sleeve and pointed at you, and I could see him trying to make words, but nothing came out. Then, when Granger made his bid, Ethan shook his head. Micah grabbed my arm so hard he left marks, and he looked at me like he was begging. That's when he spoke. Why me? Evelyn asked quietly. He doesn't know me. I don't know, but he knew something. Ethan straightened up. Come on, food's getting cold. Dinner was simple. Beans, cornbread, dried beef. Evelyn ate mechanically, aware of Micah watching her from across the table. Ethan barely touched his food. Tomorrow I'll show you the ranch, Ethan said. Where everything is, how things work. If you're staying, you should know the layout. If I'm staying, Evelyn set down her fork. Do I have a choice? There's always a choice. The law says I belong to you. The law says a lot of things. Ethan met her eyes. I didn't buy you to own you. I bought you so Silas Granger couldn't. There's a difference. Then what am I? I don't know yet, Ethan said honestly. We'll figure it out as we go. That night, Evelyn lay in the unfamiliar bed and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch. Wind through the eaves, horses moving in the barn, something small scurrying across the roof. She thought about Silas Granger's threat, about her brother, wherever he was, about the boy in the next room who hadn't spoken in a year until he'd seen her face. She thought about Ethan Hale's gray-blue eyes and the way he'd looked at her on that platform. Someone worth fighting for, he'd said. Evelyn hadn't felt worth anything in a long time. She didn't cry. She'd learned years ago that crying didn't fix things. But she lay there in the dark and felt something shift inside her chest, something that might have been hope or might have been terror or might have been both at once. The first week passed in a blur of work. Ethan had been right. The ranch was behind on everything. Fences needed mending. The chicken coop was falling apart. The vegetable garden was overrun with weeds. Evelyn threw herself into it all, grateful for the distraction. Micah followed her everywhere. If she went to feed the chickens, he was right behind her. If she hung laundry, he handed her clothespins. At night, he would stand in her doorway until she invited him in, and then he would sit on the floor and play quietly while she mended clothes or read by lamplight. He still didn't speak, but he'd started making more sounds, humming while he worked, laughing when something amused him. It was progress. Ethan watched them both with an expression Evelyn couldn't quite read. On the 8th day, Evelyn was in the barn organizing tack when Ethan appeared in the doorway. We need to talk, he said. Evelyn set down the bridle she'd been oiling. All right. Ethan came inside and leaned against the workbench. I got a visit today. While you were in the garden. 3 men I didn't recognize. Evelyn's stomach tightened. What did they want? They said they were associates of your brother's creditors. Said Marcus borrowed money from some people in Silver Ridge who don't forgive debts. Ethan's jaw was tight. They said the $3,000 I paid covered the official debt, but Marcus owed another $2,000 to their boss. And since Marcus is gone, they want me to pay it. They want someone to pay it, and they know you're here. How much time did they give you? 30 days. Ethan pushed off from the workbench. I don't have $2,000. I barely had the money I paid for you, and that was with putting the ranch up as collateral. If I can't pay, they'll take me, Evelyn finished. They'll try. Maybe I should just go. The words came out before Evelyn could stop them. Maybe I should run, try to disappear. Then they can't. They'd find you. Ethan cut her off. And they'd do worse than sell you at auction. Men like that don't operate in daylight. Then what do we do? I don't know yet. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. But I'm not letting them take you. I didn't pay $3,000 just to hand you over to someone worse than Granger. Why? Evelyn stepped closer. Why does it matter to you? You didn't even know me before last week. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. You made my son speak. That's worth more than $2,000. That's worth everything. Before Evelyn could respond, Micah appeared in the barn doorway. His face was pale. What's wrong? Ethan asked immediately. Micah pointed toward the road. They walked outside together. In the distance, a group of riders was approaching, 5 men on horseback, moving slowly, deliberately. Get inside, Ethan said quietly. Take Micah. Lock the doors. What are you going to do? Talk to them. Go. Evelyn grabbed Micah's hand and pulled him toward the house. Behind her, she heard Ethan walking toward the riders. She got Micah inside, locked the door, and then stood at the window watching. The riders stopped about 20 feet from Ethan. The man in front was older, heavy-set, with a black beard. They talked. Evelyn couldn't hear the words, but she could see Ethan's posture, straight, unyielding. Then the bearded man pointed at the house. Ethan shook his head. The bearded man said something else. Ethan's hands curled into fists. Then one of the riders drew a gun. Evelyn's breath stopped. Ethan didn't move. He stood there looking up at the armed rider like he was daring him to pull the trigger. The bearded man laughed. Evelyn could see his shoulders shaking. He said something to the gunman who holstered his weapon. Then all 5 riders turned their horses and rode away. Ethan stood there until they disappeared. Then he walked back to the house. Evelyn unlocked the door. "What did they say?" she asked. Ethan's face was pale. "They said they're giving me 30 days to come up with $2,000. After that, they're coming for you whether I like it or not." He paused. "And they said if I try to run with you, they'll kill me and take you anyway. We need to go to the law. The law won't help. These men work for someone with connections. The magistrate won't touch it." "Then what?" I said, "I don't know." Ethan's voice rose and Micah flinched. Ethan immediately crouched down and pulled his son close. I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to yell." Micah buried his face against Ethan's shoulder. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. This family had saved her, and now she was destroying them. "I should go," she said again. "I'll leave tonight. They'll follow me, and you'll be safe." "You think I'm going to let you walk out into the desert alone so those men can hunt you down?" Ethan straightened up, still holding Micah. "That's not happening." "Then we're all in danger." "We were already in danger the moment I made that bid." Ethan met her eyes. "And I'd do it again." That night after Micah was asleep, Evelyn sat on the porch steps and stared at the stars. The desert night was cold and clear and endless. She heard the door open behind her. Ethan sat down beside her. "I've been thinking," he said. "There might be a way to get the money." "How?" "I could sell the cattle early. It's not the best time. Prices are low right now. But if I take them to Silver Ridge instead of waiting for the Redstone buyers, I might be able to scrape together enough. You'd lose money. I'd keep you alive. That's worth more." "Stop saying things like that," Evelyn said quietly. "Why?" "Because I can't." She stopped, started again. "I can't let myself believe that someone actually cares whether I live or die. Not when everything could fall apart tomorrow." "It's not going to fall apart." "You don't know that." "No," Ethan agreed, "but I'm going to fight like hell to make sure it doesn't." They sat in silence for a while. An owl called from somewhere in the darkness. The wind moved through the grass like breathing. "Micah asked about you today," Ethan said eventually. "He brought me his slate and wrote your name. Then he wrote, 'Stay.'" Evelyn's eyes burned. "He wrote that?" "3 times. Stay, stay, stay." Ethan turned to look at her. "He lost his mother. I think he's terrified he's going to lose you too." "He barely knows me." "Doesn't matter. You brought something back to him. Hope, maybe? Or just proof that good things can still happen." Ethan's voice was rough. "I saw it too. When you were standing on that platform. Everyone else saw something to use. I saw someone who refused to break. I felt pretty broken." "You weren't. Trust me." Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him. The lines around his eyes, the way his hands couldn't quite stay still, the exhaustion in every part of him. "You're barely holding it together yourself," she said. "I know." "Then why take on my problems too?" "Because maybe we can hold each other up." Ethan stood. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow I'm going to start gathering the cattle. The sooner I can get them to market, the better." He went inside. Evelyn stayed on the porch for a long time, thinking about $2,000 and 30 days and the way Micah had written "stay" 3 times on his slate. Thinking about Ethan Hale risking everything he had for someone he barely knew. Thinking about how terrifying it was to start believing that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be saved. The days blurred together after that. Ethan worked from dawn until long after dark, rounding up cattle with the help of 2 ranch hands he'd hired from town. Evelyn kept the house running, took care of Micah, and tried not to think about the deadline creeping closer. Micah was speaking more now, single words mostly. "Yes. No. Hungry. Please." Each word felt like a small miracle. On the 15th day, Ethan came home covered in dust and dried blood. "What happened?" Evelyn demanded, pulling him inside. "One of the steers gored my arm." He sat down heavily at the table. "It's fine, just needs cleaning." It was not fine. The cut was deep and ragged, still seeping. Evelyn brought water and clean cloth and began washing it as gently as she could. "This needs stitches," she said. I don't have time for stitches." "Ethan." "I said I don't have time." He pulled his arm back, then immediately looked guilty. "I'm sorry, we're running out of days and the cattle aren't cooperating.
and 2 of them got loose last night, and I had to spend half of today tracking them down. If I don't get this herd to Silver Ridge in time, let me help." "You don't know how to herd cattle." "Then teach me." Evelyn held his gaze. "You can't do this alone. You're going to kill yourself trying."
Ethan stared at her. Then slowly he nodded. "All right, tomorrow. But first let me teach you how to ride." The next morning, Evelyn found herself on top of a horse for the first time in her life. "Relax," Ethan said, standing next to her with one hand on the horse's bridle. "She can feel when you're tense. I'm about to fall off." "You're not going to fall off. Just breathe." Evelyn took a breath. The horse shifted beneath her. Evelyn grabbed the saddle horn. "Easy," Ethan said. "She's just adjusting. Talk to her. Let her know you're there." "What do I say to a horse?" "Anything. She doesn't care about the words, just the tone." Evelyn felt ridiculous, but she tried. "Hello, horse. Please don't kill me." Ethan laughed, the first real laugh she'd heard from him. "That's a start." By the end of the day, Evelyn could walk the horse in a circle without panicking. By the end of the week, she could trot. It wasn't graceful, but it was functional. "Good enough," Ethan said. "Tomorrow you're coming with us." Working the cattle was brutal. The sun was merciless. The animals were stubborn and stupid and occasionally violent. Evelyn fell off her horse twice, got kicked once, and spent most of the first day convinced she was going to die. But she didn't quit. And somewhere around the third day, something shifted. She started anticipating what the cattle would do, started reading Ethan's hand signals, started feeling like maybe she belonged out there in the dust and heat and chaos. Micah watched from the porch each day when they came back. Evelyn would collapse at the table, filthy and exhausted, and Micah would bring her water and sit beside her without speaking. Just being there. On the 21st day, Ethan announced they had enough cattle gathered. They'd leave for Silver Ridge in the morning. That night, a storm rolled in. Evelyn was in the barn checking on the horses when the first lightning strike hit. The sound was deafening, a crack like the world splitting open. The horses screamed and reared. "Easy!" Evelyn grabbed the nearest horse's halter. "Easy, easy." Thunder rolled through the canyon. Rain began hammering on the roof. Then Micah was there, Tuts soaking wet, his eyes wide with terror. "Micah!" Evelyn left the horses and ran to him. "What are you doing out here?" He couldn't speak. He was shaking too hard. Evelyn pulled him against her, trying to shield him from the rain pouring through gaps in the roof. "It's okay," she said. "It's just a storm. It can't hurt you." Micah made a sound, half sob, half scream. His fingers dug into her arms. "Micah, breathe. Can you breathe for me?" He was hyperventilating now, his whole body rigid. Evelyn dropped to her knees and held him at arm's length. "Look at me. Micah, look at me." He did. His eyes were huge and dark and filled with raw panic. "Tell me what you're afraid of," Evelyn said. "Thunder," Micah whispered. Mama died when it thundered. She couldn't breathe, and the thunder was so loud, and I couldn't help her, and "I'm here," Evelyn said. "I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. Do you hear me? I'm not leaving." Micah collapsed against her, sobbing. Evelyn held him and rocked him and let him cry while the storm raged overhead. That's where Ethan found them 20 minutes later, sitting in the hay while Micah clung to Evelyn like she was the only thing keeping him from drowning. "He remembered," Evelyn said quietly, "the night his mother died. There was thunder." Ethan's face did something complicated. He knelt beside them and put his hand on Micah's back. "It's over now, buddy," Ethan said. "The bad part is over." But Micah wouldn't let go of Evelyn. They stayed in the barn until the storm passed. When the rain finally stopped and the thunder faded to distant rumbles, Micah was asleep in Evelyn's arms. Ethan carried him back to the house and put him to bed. Evelyn followed, dripping rainwater across the floor. She stood in the doorway of Micah's room and watched Ethan tuck the blanket around his son. "He hasn't cried like that since the funeral," Ethan said quietly. "He's been holding it in all this time. Maybe he needed someone he felt safe enough to cry with." Ethan looked up at her. "He's not the only one." The words hung in the air between them. "We leave in the morning," Ethan said finally. "If everything goes right, we'll have enough to pay the debt. If it doesn't—" He didn't finish. "What will you do if it's not enough?" Evelyn asked. "Fight." Ethan stood. "I'll fight until there's nothing left to fight with. That's all I know how to do."
You barely know me, Evelyn said. Why would you fight for someone you barely know?
Ethan crossed the room in 3 steps. He stopped right in front of her, close enough that she could see the storm still reflected in his eyes. I know enough, he said quietly. I know you've survived things that would have broken most people. I know you make my son smile. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know you're brave and you're kind, and you deserve better than what this world has given you. He paused. And I know that I can't imagine this ranch without you in it. Evelyn couldn't breathe. Ethan, get some sleep, he said. We have a long day tomorrow. He walked past her into the hallway. Evelyn stood there alone, her heart pounding, her mind racing. She knew, standing there in the dark, that something had fundamentally changed. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was starting to live, and that terrified her more than anything else. They left before sunrise with 63 head of cattle and 2 pack horses loaded with supplies. Micah stayed behind with Mrs. Chen, the nearest neighbor, a Chinese woman who ran a small trading post 5 miles east. Evelyn had watched the boy's face crumble when Ethan explained he couldn't come, watched him grab her hand and refuse to let go until she promised she'd come back. I will, she'd said, kneeling in front of him. I swear it, Micah. He'd written something on his slate and held it up. Don't die. The memory sat heavy in Evelyn's chest as she rode beside Ethan through the pre-dawn darkness. The cattle moved sluggishly ahead of them, their shapes just shadows against shadows. He'll be fine, Ethan said, reading her expression. Mrs. Chen raised 7 boys. She knows how to handle a scared kid. I'm not worried about him being handled. I'm worried about him thinking we're not coming back. Then we'll come back. You say that like it's simple. Ethan adjusted his hat against the first rays of sun breaking over the horizon. It is simple. We drive the cattle to Silver Ridge. We sell them. We get the money. We go home. Complicated is what happens if we fail. They rode in silence for a while. The desert was waking up around them. Birds calling, lizards skittering across rocks, the dry heat already starting to build. Evelyn's legs ached from days of riding. Her hands were blistered from handling rope. She'd never been this tired in her life, and they were only 2 hours into a 3-day journey. Tell me about her, Evelyn said suddenly. Your wife. Ethan's jaw tightened. Why? Because Micah doesn't talk about her and you don't talk about her, and that house feels like a tomb sometimes. I just want to know who she was. For a long time, Ethan didn't answer. The cattle kept moving. The sun kept climbing. Her name was Sarah, he finally said. We met in St. Louis. She was working in her father's store, and I was passing through on my way west. She had red hair and freckles and this laugh that made everyone around her laugh too. He paused. Her father didn't want her to marry me, said I had nothing to offer. He was right, mostly. But Sarah didn't care. She followed me out here with nothing but a trunk full of books and more optimism than anyone should have. She sounds wonderful. She was. For a while. Ethan's voice went flat. Then the reality of frontier life hit her. The isolation, the work, losing 2 babies before Micah. She got quiet, stopped laughing. By the time Micah was born, she was just going through the motions. Did she love him? She tried to. I think she wanted to. But something broke in her after the second miscarriage, and I don't think it ever healed. Ethan shifted in his saddle. When she got sick, it was almost like she was relieved, like she'd been waiting for permission to stop fighting. That's not fair to her memory. I know, but it's true. He looked at Evelyn. Micah was holding her hand when she died, and the last thing she said to him was, I'm sorry. Not, I love you. Not, be strong. Just, I'm sorry. What kind of last words are those for a 7-year-old? Evelyn didn't have an answer. They pushed the cattle hard that first day, covering almost 15 miles before making camp near a dried-up creek bed. Evelyn's entire body screamed when she dismounted. Ethan caught her when her legs buckled. You did good, he said. I can barely walk. That means you did it right. He steadied her until she found her balance. Go sit down. I'll handle the horses. Evelyn collapsed next to the fire pit they'd scraped out in the dirt. Every muscle hurt. Her skin was sunburned despite the hat. Her throat was raw from breathing dust all day. Ethan built a fire and heated up beans and coffee. They ate in silence, too tired to talk. Above them, stars appeared one by one until the sky was thick with them. "How much do you think we'll get?" Evelyn asked eventually. "For the cattle? If we're lucky, maybe 1,800. The market's bad right now." "That's not enough." "It's what we have." Ethan poured more coffee. "We'll figure out the rest somehow." "How?" "I don't know, Evelyn. I'm making this up as I go." She appreciated the honesty, at least. They took turns sleeping, one person keeping watch while the other rested. Evelyn took the first shift, sitting by the dying fire with Ethan's rifle across her lap. She'd never held a gun before 3 weeks ago. Now it felt almost natural. The night was alive with sounds, coyotes yipping in the distance, cattle shifting and lowing, something larger moving through the brush just beyond the firelight. Evelyn kept the rifle ready and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. When Ethan woke her for his shift, she fell asleep so fast she didn't even remember lying down. The second day was worse than the first. 2 steers broke away from the herd and had to be chased down. A rattlesnake spooked Evelyn's horse, nearly throwing her. By noon, the temperature was brutal enough that they had to stop and rest in the shade of some rocks. "We're losing time," Ethan muttered, checking the sun's position. "We're losing consciousness if we keep going in this heat," Evelyn shot back. "The cattle are barely moving as it is." She was right, and Ethan knew it. They waited until the worst of the afternoon heat passed, then pushed on into the evening, making up some of the lost time. That night, they camped near an actual creek with actual water. Evelyn washed her face and hands while Ethan watered the horses. When she straightened up, he was watching her. "What?" she asked. "Nothing, just, you've changed. I'm covered in dirt and I smell like cattle. If that's change, I don't want it." "That's not what I mean." Ethan led his horse to the picket line and tied it off. "When I first saw you at that auction, you looked like you were trying to disappear. Now you look like you're ready to fight the whole desert if you have to." "Maybe I am." "Good." He walked over and sat down next to her. "Because that's what it takes to survive out here. You have to be willing to fight for every single day." Evelyn looked at him. Really looked at him. The exhaustion carved into his face, the way his shoulders curved forward like he was carrying something too heavy, the gray in his hair that probably hadn't been there before his wife died. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked. "Just selling everything and going somewhere easier? Every day?" "Then why don't you? Because this is all I have, this ranch, this land. It's the only thing I've ever built that lasted. If I give it up..." He trailed off. "I don't know who I am without it." "You're Micah's father. That's who you are. That's who I'm trying to be." Ethan picked up a stick and poked at the fire. "Some days I'm not sure I'm doing a very good job." "He spoke because of you. He's getting better because of you. He's getting better because of you." Ethan tossed the stick into the flames. "You know it's true. He barely looked at me for months after Sarah died. Then you showed up and suddenly he's talking and playing and acting like a kid again. That's not..." "It is." Ethan turned to face her. "And I'm grateful. More grateful than I know how to say." The fire crackled between them. Somewhere in the darkness, a nightbird called. "I'm scared," Evelyn admitted quietly. "About what happens when we get to Silver Ridge, about whether the money will be enough, about those men coming for me anyway. I'm scared too. You don't act like it." "That's because I can't afford to." Ethan's voice was rough. "If I let myself think about all the ways this could go wrong, I'd never get out of bed in the morning." They sat there in silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. Eventually, Ethan stood and offered his hand. "Get some rest," he said. "I'll take first watch tonight." Evelyn let him pull her to her feet. For a moment, they stood close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him, smell the dust and sweat and something else underneath, something that was just him. Then he stepped back, and the moment passed. She lay down in her bedroll and stared at the stars and wondered when exactly she'd started caring about Ethan Hale as more than just the man who'd saved her. They reached Silver Ridge late on the third day, dusty and exhausted and down to 59 cattle after losing 4 to various disasters along the way. The town was bigger than Redstone Hollow, a real cattle town with stockyards and a rail depot and buildings that looked permanent. Ethan took the cattle straight to the yards while Evelyn found a boarding house and paid for a room where she could wash the trail dirt off her skin. The water in the basin was cold and gray by the time she finished, but she felt almost human again. She met Ethan at a restaurant near the stockyards. He looked grim. "How much?" she asked before he even sat down. $1,600. Evelyn's stomach dropped. "That's not—" "I know." Ethan collapsed into the chair across from her. "Market's worse than I thought. Buyers are being careful. I tried to negotiate, but they wouldn't budge. So we're still 400 short." "Yeah." The waiter brought coffee. Evelyn wrapped her hands around the cup and tried to think. "What if we sell the horses?" she suggested. "We need them to get home." "What if we don't go home? What if we just keep running?" "They'll find us. Men like that always do." Ethan rubbed his eyes. "And even if they didn't, I have a son. I can't just abandon him." "Then what do we do?" "I don't know." Ethan's voice cracked. "I don't have any more answers, Evelyn. I'm out of ideas." She'd never seen him like this. Defeated, broken. It scared her more than the debt collectors had. "We'll think of something," she said, knowing it sounded hollow. They finished their coffee in silence. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the dusty street gold and orange. People walked past the window. Cowboys, merchants, families. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that Evelyn's entire future hung on $400 she didn't have. "I should have let Silas take me," she said quietly. "At least then you'd still have your ranch." "Don't." Ethan's hand shot across the table and grabbed hers. "Don't say that. Don't even think it." "Why not? It's true." "No, what's true is that I made a choice, and I'd make it again. What's true is that you're worth more than any ranch, any amount of money, any of this." He squeezed her hand. "What's true is that I—" He stopped, released her hand, looked away. "What?" Evelyn whispered. "Nothing. Forget it." But she couldn't forget it. She could see it in his face. Whatever he'd almost said, whatever he'd stopped himself from saying. They walked back to the boarding house together in the fading light. At the door to Evelyn's room, Ethan paused. "Tomorrow I'll try the other buyers," he said. "Maybe someone will pay more, or maybe—" He shook his head. "Just get some sleep." He turned to go, and Evelyn caught his arm. "Ethan." He looked back at her. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. For fighting for me. For not giving up. For seeing me as more than just a problem to solve." Something flickered in his eyes. "You were never a problem. Then what am I?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly she almost didn't hear it, "You're the reason I remember what hope feels like." He left before she could respond. Evelyn went into her room, closed the door, and leaned against it. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. Everything felt too big suddenly, too real. She thought about Micah waiting for her at Mrs. Chen's, thought about the ranch and the life she'd started building there, thought about Ethan's gray-blue eyes and the way he looked at her like she mattered. She thought about how much she had to lose now. And that's when the fear really set in. The next morning, Evelyn woke to someone pounding on her door. She grabbed her shawl and opened it to find Ethan standing there, his face ashen. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "The money's gone." "What?" "The $1,600 from the cattle sale. I had it in my saddlebag at the stable. Someone broke in last night and took it. All of it." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Evelyn's feet. "That can't—" "It's gone." Ethan's voice was hollow. "We have nothing." Evelyn sank onto the bed. "Did you report it to the sheriff?" "He said there's nothing he can do. No witnesses, no evidence. Just my word that I had the money in the first place." "So someone knew. Someone knew you were here and why." "Yeah." Ethan sat down beside her. "I think this was planned. I think those debt collectors wanted to make sure I couldn't pay even if I sold everything I owned. They're going to come for me. I won't let them." "How? You just said we have nothing." "Then we'll run. Tonight. We'll get back to the ranch, grab Micah, and we'll disappear. They'll hunt us down. Maybe. But at least we'll be together." Ethan took her hand. "I'm not giving up, Evelyn. I don't care what it takes. I'm not losing you." She wanted to believe him. She wanted so badly to believe that wanting something badly enough could make it happen. But she'd learned a long time ago that the world didn't care what you wanted. They spent the day making preparations, buying supplies with the little money Ethan had left, mapping out a route that would keep them off main roads, trying to figure out where they could go where no one would find them. It was a desperate plan. It probably wouldn't work, but it was all they had. That evening, they were loading supplies onto their horses when a woman's voice called out behind them. "Mr. Hale?" Ethan turned. A carriage had stopped in the street, an expensive carriage with a driver and 2 horses. A woman sat inside, her face hidden by a veil. "I need to speak with you," the woman said. "Both of you. It's important." "We're not interested," Ethan said. "You will be. It's about Silas Granger." Evelyn's blood went cold. The woman gestured to the carriage. "Please, just a few minutes. I promise it will be worth your time." Ethan and Evelyn exchanged a look. Then, against every instinct screaming at them to run, they climbed into the carriage. The woman lifted her veil. She was beautiful in a fragile, fading way, like a flower pressed between book pages. Her skin was pale, her eyes enormous and dark. She looked sick. "My name is Celeste Granger," she said. "I'm Silas's wife." Evelyn stopped breathing. "I know who you are, Miss Mercer," Celeste continued. "I know what my husband tried to do at that auction, and I know about the debt collectors who've been threatening you." "What do you want?" Ethan's voice was hard. "To help." Celeste pulled an envelope from her bag and held it out. "There's $2,000 in here, enough to pay your debt and have something left over." Neither of them moved. "Why would you help us?" Evelyn asked. Celeste's smile was sad. "Because I know what my husband is. I've known for years. And I'm dying, Miss Mercer. The doctors give me maybe 3 months. I've spent too much of my life being afraid of Silas. I won't die still being afraid." "This could be a trap," Ethan said. "It could be, but it's not." Celeste pressed the envelope into Evelyn's hands. "Silas doesn't know I'm here. He thinks I'm resting at the hotel. When he finds out I gave you this money, he'll be furious. He might even kill me. But I'm dying anyway, so what does it matter?" "Why does he care so much?" Evelyn whispered. "Why is he so obsessed with me?" "Because you humiliated him. Because you survived his attempt to control you, and men like Silas can't tolerate that." Celeste's voice hardened. "But there's more. Things you need to know. Things about what he's done." She told them everything. About Silas's first wife, Catherine, who'd tried to run away and been found dead at the bottom of a ravine. Ruled an accident, though everyone whispered otherwise. About his second wife, Margaret, who disappeared one night and was never seen again. Silas claimed she'd left him, but Celeste had found Margaret's wedding ring hidden in Silas's desk. About the letters Catherine had written describing years of torture, beatings, threats, isolation. Letters Celeste had found hidden in the estate and kept secret all these years out of fear. "He's a monster," Celeste said quietly. "And he's fixated on you, Miss Mercer, because you're the one who got away, the one who defied him publicly. He won't stop until he owns you or destroys you." "Then the money won't help," Evelyn said. "He'll just find another way." "Probably, but at least it buys you time." Celeste looked at Ethan. "Use it wisely. Get somewhere safe. And if you get the chance to destroy him, if you find evidence of his crimes, use it." She handed Evelyn another envelope. "These are copies of Catherine's letters. I've kept them hidden for 5 years. They're yours now. Maybe they'll be enough to bring him down." The carriage stopped. They were back at the boarding house. "Why are you doing this?" Evelyn asked again. Celeste's eyes filled with tears. "Because I was you once, young and scared and trapped, and no one helped me. No one saved me. I won't let that happen to another woman, not while I still have breath in my body." She pulled her veil back down. "Go, before someone sees you with me." Ethan and Evelyn climbed out. The carriage pulled away, disappearing into the evening traffic. They stood on the sidewalk, Evelyn clutching 2 envelopes that might save their lives or might get them killed. "This is insane," Ethan said. "I know. We should leave anyway, right now, just in case it's a trap. I know." But neither of them moved. Evelyn opened the first envelope. Inside were crisp bills, more money than she'd ever seen in one place. She counted it twice, $2,000 exactly. The second envelope contained letters written in careful feminine handwriting. She read the first one and felt sick. "He beat her," she said quietly. "For years. He locked her in the cellar,
starved her, threatened to kill her family if she tried to leave. Ethan took the letters and read them, his face getting harder with each page.
"This is evidence," he said. "Real evidence. If we could get this to the territorial authorities, he'd kill us before we got there. He has connections everywhere." "Then what do we do with it?" Evelyn thought about Celeste's pale face, about her quiet courage, about the fact that she was dying and had chosen to spend her last months fighting back. "We keep it safe," Evelyn said, "and when the time comes, we use it to bury him." They rode out of Silver Ridge before dawn, the money hidden in Ethan's saddlebag and the letters sewn into the lining of Evelyn's coat. They didn't talk about Celeste or Silas, or the fact that accepting this help had probably painted an even bigger target on their backs. They just rode. The journey back felt different, faster maybe, or just more urgent. They pushed hard, stopping only when the horses needed rest. On the second night, camped under a sky so clear you could see the Milky Way, Ethan finally broke the silence. "What happens when we get back?" "We pay the debt. We get them off our backs. And then?" Evelyn looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, after. After the debt is paid and the immediate danger is gone. What happens to us?"
She knew what he was really asking. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I haven't let myself think that far ahead." "Maybe you should." "Why?" He moved closer, close enough that she could see her reflection in his eyes. "Because I need to know if you're staying, if this is temporary, or if you want what I want." "What do you want?" "You." The word came out rough and raw. "I want you to stay. I want you and Micah and me to be a family, a real family. I want to wake up every morning and know you're there. I want—" Evelyn kissed him. She didn't plan it, didn't think about it, just leaned forward and pressed her lips to his and felt him freeze for half a second before he kissed her back. His hands came up to frame her face. Her fingers tangled in his shirt. The kiss was desperate and clumsy and perfect. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Was that an answer?" he whispered. "Yes." "Good." He kissed her again, softer this time. "Good." They held each other by the dying fire and didn't talk about all the ways this could still fall apart. Didn't talk about Silas or debt collectors, or the fact that they were probably walking into a trap. For one night, they just let themselves believe that wanting something badly enough could make it real. They reached the ranch late the next afternoon. Mrs. Chen was on the porch with Micah, and the boy came running the moment he saw them. Evelyn slid off her horse and caught him as he launched himself at her. He was crying and laughing and talking all at once. "You came back, you came back, you came back. I promised, didn't I?" Evelyn held him tight. "I told you I would." Ethan thanked Mrs. Chen and saw her off. Then he gathered Evelyn and Micah and brought them inside. "We have the money," he told Micah. "We're going to be okay." Micah looked at Evelyn. "Promise?" She wanted to promise. Wanted to tell him everything would be fine and they were safe and nothing bad would ever happen again. But she'd learned not to make promises she couldn't keep. "I promise we'll fight," she said instead. "I promise we won't give up." It would have to be enough. That night, after Micah was asleep, Ethan counted out the money and divided it carefully. $2,000 for the debt. The rest, barely $200 for everything else. "Tomorrow I'll ride into town and pay them," he said. "Get this done." "I'm coming with you." "Evelyn, I'm coming. This is my debt. I should be there when it's settled." He wanted to argue. She could see it in his face, but he also knew her well enough now to know it wouldn't work. "All right," he said. "We'll go together." They went to bed separately that night. Evelyn in her room, Ethan in his, but Evelyn lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, thinking about tomorrow, thinking about the fact that paying the debt wouldn't end this. Silas Granger was still out there, and men like him didn't forgive, didn't forget. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Morning came too fast and brought with it a sky the color of old bruises. Evelyn stood on the porch, watching storm clouds gather over the mountains, while Ethan saddled the horses. Micah sat on the steps, quiet in that way that meant he knew something bad was coming. "How long will you be gone?" the boy asked. "Just the day," Ethan said, tightening a cinch. "We'll be back before dark." "What if you're not?" Evelyn sat down beside him. "Then Mrs. Chen will come stay with you until we are.
But we will be back, Micah. I promise. She'd sworn she wouldn't make promises she couldn't keep, but sometimes children needed to hear the lie more than they needed the truth. They rode out with $2,000 in Ethan's saddlebag and Catherine Granger's letters still sewn into Evelyn's coat lining. The weight of both felt heavier than it should have. Evelyn kept touching her side, feeling the crinkle of paper beneath the fabric, reminding herself it was real, that they had evidence, that maybe, somehow, this could end differently than she feared. "You're quiet," Ethan said after the first hour. "I'm thinking. About how this feels wrong, too easy. We show up, hand over money, and they just let us walk away? Men like that don't work that way. Maybe they will once the debt's settled." "You don't believe that any more than I do." Ethan didn't argue. They rode on through the heavy morning air, the smell of coming rain thick around them. Redstone Hollow appeared on the horizon just before noon, shimmering in the heat. The town looked exactly the same as it had weeks ago. Same dusty streets, same weathered buildings, same people going about their business like Evelyn's life hadn't been bought and sold in their town square. They found the debt collectors at the saloon, just like they'd been told. 3 men playing cards at a back table. The one in the middle was the bearded man who'd come to the ranch, the one who'd pointed a gun at Ethan and smiled while doing it. "Mr. Hale," the man said without looking up from his cards. "And the lady herself, right on time." Ethan pulled a chair out for Evelyn, then sat beside her. "We have your money." "Do you now?" The bearded man laid down his cards, 3 aces. The other 2 players threw in their hands with disgusted looks. "That's real convenient, seeing as how your deadline's still a week away. Makes a man wonder where you got $2,000 so quick." "That's not your concern." "Maybe it is. Maybe I'm curious whether you robbed a bank or sold that pretty little ranch of yours." "I sold cattle. At market. Legal and square." Ethan put the money on the table. $2,000. Count it." The bearded man picked up the stack of bills and shuffled through them slowly, making a show of it. His companions watched Evelyn with expressions that made her skin crawl. "Looks right," the man said finally. He tucked the money into his coat pocket. "Pleasure doing business with you." "So we're done," Ethan said. "The debt's paid." "Your debt to us is paid, sure. But that don't mean you're done, Mr. Hale." Evelyn felt ice slide down her spine. "What does that mean?" The bearded man smiled. "Means there's interest on late payments. Means there's fees for our time and trouble. Means Miss Mercer's brother created one hell of a mess, and somebody's got to clean it up." "That's not how this works," Ethan said. His voice was dangerously quiet. "You said 2,000 cleared the debt." "I said it cleared the principal. I didn't say nothing about the rest." "How much?" Evelyn asked. "Another 1,000. Maybe more, depending on how the boss calculates it." "That's robbery." "That's business, ma'am." The bearded man leaned back in his chair. "You got 30 days to come up with it. Same as before. Clock starts now." Ethan's hand went to his belt. Evelyn grabbed his wrist before he could do something stupid. "We'll find it," she said. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. 30 days. We'll have it." "I surely hope so. Be a shame if something unfortunate happened to that nice ranch of yours, or that boy." The man's smile widened. "Accidents happen all the time out in the territory. People get hurt, property gets damaged. You understand." Ethan stood so fast his chair fell backward. "If you touch my son—" "Easy now." The bearded man didn't move, but his companions did, hands going to their guns. "No need for threats. We're all civilized people here." "We're leaving," Evelyn said. She pulled Ethan toward the door. He resisted for a moment, then let her lead him out. They made it halfway to their horses before Ethan stopped and slammed his fist into the nearest wall. Wood splintered. His knuckles came away bloody. "It was a setup," he said. "The whole thing. They were never going to let us pay it off. They'll keep adding fees and interest until we have nothing left." "I know." "So what do we do?" Evelyn looked back at the saloon. Through the window, she could see the bearded man laughing with his friends, celebrating probably. Another successful shakedown. "We go home," she said. "We figure out our next move, and we don't panic." "Don't panic." "They just threatened Micah." "I know, but running in there with your fists won't save him. We need to be smart about this." Ethan looked at his bleeding knuckles like he was surprised to see them. "I don't know how to be smart about this. I just know how to be angry. Then be angry later. Right now we need to leave before you get yourself killed. They rode out of town fast, pushing the horses harder than they should have. The storm that had been threatening all morning finally broke about an hour into their journey, dumping rain so thick they could barely see 10 feet ahead. They took shelter under a rock outcropping and waited for the worst to pass. Evelyn was soaked through, shivering despite the warm air. Ethan pulled her close and wrapped his coat around both of them. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what? For dragging you into this, for making it worse, for everything. You didn't drag me anywhere. I was already in it. But I made you hope it could be different. I made you think we could actually win." Evelyn turned to look at him. Rain dripped from his hair, ran down his face. He looked exhausted and defeated and furious all at once. "We can still win," she said. "How? They'll keep bleeding us dry until there's nothing left. That's what men like that do. Then we cut them off at the source. We find out who they're working for, and we destroy him." "You think it's Granger, don't you?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Yeah, I do. This has his fingerprints all over it. The timing, the setup, the threats. He couldn't buy you at auction, so he's finding another way. So we use what we have, Catherine's letters. We expose what he is. And get ourselves killed in the process. Maybe. Or maybe we get him arrested and convicted and hung. Evelyn pulled the coat tighter around them. Celeste said if we got the chance to destroy him, we should take it. This is our chance. You're talking about going after the most powerful man in the territory with some old letters that may or may not hold up as evidence. You have a better idea? Ethan didn't. They both knew it. The rain slowed to a drizzle, then stopped. They rode on through muddy ground, not talking, both lost in their own thoughts. By the time they reached the ranch, night was falling and Evelyn's mind was made up. "We're going to his estate," she said as they dismounted. "Tonight. We're going to search it and find more evidence. Something concrete that connects him to his wives' deaths, to the debt collectors, to all of it. That's insane." "Probably, but it's the only move we have left." Micah came running out of the house, Mrs. Chen following more slowly. The boy threw himself at Evelyn, and she caught him, held him, breathed in the little boy smell of him. "Everything okay?" Mrs. Chen asked. "Fine," Evelyn lied. "Thank you for staying with him." After Mrs. Chen left, they put Micah to bed. The boy fought sleep, kept getting up, kept finding excuses to check that they were still there. Finally, Evelyn lay down beside him until he dropped off, one small hand curled around her sleeve. She found Ethan in the kitchen, staring at a map of the territory spread across the table. "Granger's estate is here," he said, pointing. "About 12 miles south. We could get there and back in one night if we rode hard. But the place is huge. We'd need hours to search it properly, and there's staff everywhere, guards. We'd be spotted before we got close." "Not if we went during one of his parties." Ethan looked up. "What?" Celeste mentioned he hosts gatherings, big ones with half the territory in attendance. If we went during one of those, we could slip in with the crowd, blend in, search while everyone's distracted. "How do we know when the next party is?" "We asked someone who'd know, someone who moves in those circles." It took them 2 days to find out that Silas Granger was hosting a reception that Saturday night, 4 days away. Some kind of business celebration, invitation only, expected to run until past midnight. "How do we get in without an invitation?" Ethan asked. Evelyn thought about it. "We steal one, or we forge one, or we climb through a window. I don't care how we get in, but we're going." They spent the next 3 days preparing. Ethan borrowed formal clothes from a friend in town, clothes that fit poorly and smelled like mothballs but would pass in dim lighting. Evelyn had nothing suitable, so she modified one of Sarah's old dresses, the only nice thing left in the house. It hung wrong on her, too loose in some places and too tight in others, but it would have to work. Saturday arrived cold and clear. They left Micah with Mrs. Chen again, the boy crying and begging them not to go. Evelyn's heart broke a little more each time she had to walk away from him. "If we don't come back," she started to tell Mrs. Chen. "You'll come back," the older woman interrupted. "You will. That boy needs you." They rode through the afternoon and into evening, arriving at Granger's estate just as the sun was setting. The place was massive, a sprawling house built more like a fortress than a home, surrounded by manicured grounds and iron fencing. Carriages lined the drive, and well-dressed people moved between the house and gardens. Ethan and Evelyn left their horses tied a quarter-mile away and approached on foot. They walked in through the main entrance like they belonged there. Evelyn's arm looped through Ethan's, both of them trying to look casual while their hearts hammered. No one stopped them. Inside, the house was overwhelming. Chandeliers dripping crystal, floors polished to mirrors, music drifting from somewhere deeper in. Rich people in expensive clothes drinking expensive liquor and pretending their money made them better than everyone else. "We need to split up," Evelyn whispered. "Cover more ground." "No, we stay together. If something goes wrong and we're together, we both get caught. This way at least one of us might make it out." Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. 15 minutes. We meet back here in 15 minutes. If you're not here, I'm coming to find you. Deal. She slipped away into the crowd before he could change his mind. The house was a maze of rooms, parlors, sitting rooms, a library that probably held more books than the entire town of Redstone Hollow. Evelyn moved through them quickly, searching for anything that looked like a study or office. She found it on the second floor at the end of a long hallway. The door was locked, but Evelyn had learned a few things about locks from her brother before he'd disappeared. She pulled a hairpin from her hair and worked it into the mechanism until something clicked. Inside, the study was dark and smelled like leather and tobacco. Evelyn lit a lamp and started searching. Desk drawers first. Letters, business documents, account ledgers. Nothing useful. She moved to the filing cabinets, rifling through folders while keeping one ear trained on the hallway outside. That's when she found it. A folder marked personal correspondence, containing letters in multiple handwritings. She pulled them out and started reading by lamplight. One from Catherine, begging someone named Richard to help her escape. Another from Margaret, Silas's second wife, describing locked doors and threats. A third from a woman named Elizabeth who Evelyn didn't recognize, talking about bruises and fear. 3 wives. Not 2. 3. Evelyn's hands were shaking as she folded the letters and tucked them into her dress. She was about to leave when she noticed the ledger on the desk, the one she'd dismissed as business accounts. She opened it again, looked closer. There were payments listed, regular payments to names she didn't recognize. Some marked SR, Silver Ridge. Some marked RH, Redstone Hollow. And beside several of the names, debt collection, Mercer case. There it was, proof. Silas was paying the debt collectors. He'd orchestrated the whole thing. Evelyn was tearing out the relevant pages when she heard footsteps in the hall. She froze. The footsteps stopped outside the door. The handle turned. Evelyn blew out the lamp and pressed herself against the wall behind the door, just as it swung open. A man entered. Not Silas, someone younger. He walked to the desk and picked something up, then turned to leave. That's when he saw the open filing cabinet. "What the—" Evelyn hit him with the lamp. He went down hard, blood spreading across the carpet. She didn't wait to see if he'd get back up. She ran, down the hallway, down the stairs, shoving through the crowd of partygoers who were starting to notice something was wrong. Someone shouted behind her, more footsteps, running now. She burst into the entry hall and found Ethan already there, his eyes wild. "Time to go," she said. They ran. Out the front door, across the lawn, people shouting behind them. Someone fired a gun. The shot went wide, splintering a tree to their left. They kept running, crashed through the hedge, stumbled down a slope toward where they'd left the horses. The horses were gone. "No, no, no!" Ethan spun around, looking for them. More shots, closer this time. "This way!" Evelyn gasped, and plunged into the woods. They ran through darkness, branches whipping at their faces, roots trying to trip them. Behind them, voices and torches spread out in a search pattern. Evelyn's lungs burned. Her dress caught on something and tore. She kept running. They burst out of the woods into a clearing and stopped short. Ahead of them, a cliff edge dropping into darkness. Behind them, torches getting closer. "We're trapped," Ethan said. Evelyn looked down. She couldn't see the bottom, couldn't tell how far the drop was, but she could hear water. A river, maybe. "How well can you swim?" she asked. Evelyn, "No. How well?" "Well enough, but—" She grabbed his hand. "Trust me?" The torches broke through the tree line. Men's voices, shouting. "I trust you," Ethan said. They jumped. The fall seemed to last forever. Then water slammed into them, cold and violent, dragging them under. Evelyn's dress tried to drown her, the weight of it pulling her down. She fought toward what she hoped was the surface, her chest screaming for air. She broke through, gasping. The current was strong, pulling her downstream. She couldn't see Ethan. "Ethan!" she screamed. "Here!" His voice came from somewhere to her left. She swam toward it, the current fighting her every stroke. She found him clinging to a rock, blood running down his face from a gash on his forehead. "You hurt?" she gasped. "I'll live." "You?" "Same." They let the current take them downstream, away from the estate, away from the searching men. When they finally dragged themselves onto the bank a mile later, they collapsed in the mud, too exhausted to move. "Did you get anything?" Ethan asked eventually. Evelyn reached into her dress and pulled out soggy, ruined papers. The ink had run, the pages falling apart. "No," she whispered. "It's destroyed. All of it." They lay there in the mud and the darkness while Evelyn felt everything they'd risked, everything they'd fought for, wash away with the river water. But then she remembered. "Wait," she said. She reached into another pocket, the one she'd sewn shut. "I took these earlier before I found the ledger." She pulled out 3 letters, still dry in their waterproof wrapping. Catherine's letters, Margaret's letters, Elizabeth's letters. They weren't perfect. They weren't complete. But they were something. "We still have evidence," she said. "Not enough to prove he paid the debt collectors, but enough to prove he murdered his wives. That has to count for something." Ethan sat up, wincing. "Maybe. If we can find someone who'll listen. Someone who isn't in Granger's pocket." "Federal marshals," Evelyn said. "They don't answer to local authorities. If we can get these letters to them, we'd have to travel to the territorial capital. That's a week's ride minimum, and we'd be on the run the whole time. So we run." "Evelyn, we run, Ethan. We take Micah and we run to the capital and we get these letters to someone who can do something with them. It's the only chance we have." He looked at her for a long moment. Mud-covered, dress torn, hair wild, absolutely refusing to give up. "Okay," he said. "We run." They walked through the night, soaked and freezing, until they found their horses grazing in a meadow 2 miles from where they'd left them. By the time they got back to the ranch, dawn was breaking, and Mrs. Chen was pacing the porch with Micah. The boy took one look at them and burst into tears. "It's okay," Evelyn said, dropping to her knees and pulling him close. "We're okay. We're here." "You're bleeding," Micah said. "Both of you." "Just scratches. We're fine." Mrs. Chen looked at them with knowing eyes. "I won't ask what happened, but you should know, riders came by last night, looking for you. I told them you'd gone to visit family in Silver Ridge. They didn't believe me, but they left." "How many riders?" Ethan asked. 5, led by that bearded man from before. Evelyn and Ethan exchanged looks. "They'll be back," Evelyn said. "We need to leave, now." They spent the next hour packing, food, clothes, weapons, everything they could carry. Ethan loaded 3 horses while Evelyn helped Micah gather his things. "Where are we going?" the boy asked. "Somewhere safe," Evelyn said. "Somewhere far away from here." "Are we coming back?" She wanted to say yes, wanted to promise him this was temporary, that they'd return to the ranch, that everything would go back to normal. But she'd learned her lesson about promises. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But wherever we go together, the 3 of us, always." Micah nodded. He looked scared but trying to be brave. It broke her heart. They were loading the last supplies when dust appeared on the horizon. Riders, moving fast. "They're coming," Ethan said. "We're out of time." "We can still make it," Evelyn said. "If we leave right now." "Look how many there are," Ethan pointed. "That's not 5 riders, that's 20, maybe more. They're not here to collect a debt. They're here to end this." He was right. This wasn't a warning. This was an execution. "The canyon," Evelyn said suddenly. "The one north of here with the narrow entrance. If we can get there first, we can defend it. Make them come at us 1 or 2 at a time." "We'd still be outnumbered." "You have a better idea?" He didn't. They rode hard for the canyon, Micah clinging to Evelyn, the pack horse struggling to keep up. Behind them, the riders gained ground. Evelyn could hear them now, hoofbeats like thunder, men shouting. They made it to the canyon entrance with maybe 2 minutes to spare. Ethan dismounted and started building a barricade with rocks and fallen branches, while Evelyn got Micah to safety deeper in the canyon. "Stay here," she told the boy. No matter what happens, you stay hidden. Understand? I want to stay with you. I know, but I need you to be safe more than I need you with me. She kissed his forehead. I love you, Micah. Remember that. I love you too. His voice was small and scared. She ran back to Ethan. He'd managed to create a decent defensive position. Not perfect, but better than nothing. He handed her a rifle. You know how to use this? Point and shoot, right? More or less. The riders appeared at the canyon entrance, 23 men on horseback led by the bearded debt collector, and behind them, in an expensive carriage, Silas Granger. The riders stopped about 50 yards out. The bearded man dismounted and walked closer, hands raised in a gesture of peace that fooled no one. Mr. Hale, he called. Miss Mercer, this doesn't have to end badly. Then leave, Ethan shouted back. Can't do that. You broke into Mr. Granger's home, assaulted his staff, stole private documents. That's serious crimes. We stole evidence of murder. That's different. Is it? Where's this evidence, then? Show it to me. Evelyn's hand went to the letters in her pocket. She didn't answer. The bearded man smiled. That's what I thought. You got nothing. And even if you did, who's going to believe a desperate woman and a failed rancher over the most respected man in the territory? Federal marshals might, Evelyn said. Federal marshals are 3 weeks away. You'd be dead long before you reached them. He took another step forward. Mr. Granger's willing to be reasonable. Give us whatever you took from his house, and he'll forget this happened. You can walk away, all of you. And the debt? Ethan asked. Forgiven. Wiped clean. You have my word. Your word means nothing. The smile disappeared. Last chance, Hale. Give us what you stole or we come in there and take it. Ethan raised his rifle. Try it. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was wind moving through the canyon and horses shifting nervously. Then Silas Granger stepped out of his carriage. He walked forward slowly, deliberately, until he stood beside the bearded man. Even from 50 yards away, Evelyn could see his cold, calculating eyes. Miss Mercer, Silas called. I believe we have unfinished business. Go to hell, Evelyn shouted. Eloquent, but ultimately pointless. Silas brushed dust from his sleeve. You see, I always get what I want. Always. Whether you live or die is entirely up to you. Give me the letters, and I'll let you walk away. Keep them, and I'll kill everyone you love while you watch, starting with that boy hiding in the rocks behind you. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. Micah. He knew about Micah. Don't you dare, she said. Then give me what's mine. Evelyn looked at Ethan. He was pale, his rifle trembling slightly. We can't, he said quietly. Those letters are the only leverage we have, the only thing keeping him from killing us outright. He'll kill Micah. He'll kill Micah anyway once he has what he wants. Men like him don't leave witnesses. Evelyn knew he was right. But she also knew she couldn't let anything happen to that boy. She pulled the letters from her pocket and held them up. These? This is what you want? That's a start, Silas said. Come and get them. Silas smiled. Then he nodded to his men. They charged. Ethan fired first, dropping the lead rider from his horse. Evelyn fired a second later, missed. The canyon erupted into chaos, gunfire, screaming horses, men shouting. Evelyn fired again and again, not sure if she was hitting anything, just trying to keep them back. A rider made it through the barricade. Ethan shot him at point-blank range. The man fell. More kept coming. This was it. This was how they died. Then someone new shouted from outside the canyon, a voice with authority Evelyn didn't recognize. Federal Marshal! Everyone down! Drop your weapons! The gunfire stopped. Evelyn risked a look. A group of riders, at least 15, had appeared behind Granger's men. They wore badges and carried rifles and looked very official and very angry. Leading them was a woman in traveling clothes, pale and thin and determined. Celeste Granger. Celeste swayed in her saddle like she might fall at any moment, but her voice didn't waver. I said drop your weapons, all of you, now. The bearded debt collector looked at Silas. Silas's face had gone white. Celeste, he said, what are you doing? What I should have done years ago. She dismounted with the help of one of the marshals, moving like every step hurt.
I'm testifying against you for murder, for fraud, for everything you've done. You're hysterical. You're sick. These men will understand. These men understand perfectly. The lead marshal, a hard-faced man in his 50s, stepped forward. We've been listening to Mrs. Granger's testimony for the past 3 days. Very detailed testimony. Very damning. Silas's eyes darted to the canyon entrance, to Evelyn. She has nothing. She's a dying woman making up stories because she's bitter. I
have letters, Celeste interrupted. Catherine's letters. The ones I hid for 5 years. Describing every beating, every threat, every time you locked her in that cellar and left her there for days. I have Margaret's diary. I have the testimony of 3 staff members who saw you strike your wives. And I have the registration records from the boarding house in Carson City where you stayed the night Catherine supposedly fell from that cliff. Boarding house records prove nothing. They do when they're 40 miles from where the body was found. When you claimed you were at a business meeting in Silver Ridge. Celeste's voice was getting weaker, but she pushed on. I have bank records showing payments to hired men. I have letters from the debt collectors acknowledging your orders. I have everything, Silas, and I gave it all to Marshal Hayes. The marshal pulled a folded document from his coat. Silas Granger, you're under arrest for the murders of Catherine Granger and Margaret Granger, for fraud, for conspiracy, and for attempted murder. Put your hands where I can see them. For a moment, Evelyn thought Silas might try to run. His men were still armed, still mounted. He could make a fight of it. But then something in him broke. She could see it happen, the moment he realized it was over, that he'd finally been caught. His shoulders sagged. His hands came up slowly. This won't stand, he said quietly. I have lawyers. I have connections. I'll be out before winter. Maybe, Marshal Hayes said, walking forward with shackles. But you'll stand trial first, and if even half of what your wife says is true, you'll hang. He locked the shackles around Silas's wrists. The sound of metal clicking shut echoed through the canyon. Celeste swayed again. This time she did fall. One of the marshals caught her before she hit the ground. Get her some water, Hayes barked. He looked at his men. Disarm these others. Anyone who resists, arrest them too. Granger's riders didn't resist. They threw down their weapons and put their hands up, suddenly very interested in cooperating. The bearded debt collector tried to slip away, but 2 marshals grabbed him. That one, Celeste said weakly, pointing. He's been doing Silas's dirty work for years. Check his pockets. You'll find payment records. They did. The bearded man cursed and struggled, but the marshals held him tight. Evelyn climbed out from behind the barricade on shaking legs. Ethan was right behind her, still holding his rifle like he couldn't quite believe the shooting had stopped. Marshal Hayes walked over to them. You 2 must be Hale and Mercer. Yes, sir, Ethan said. Mrs. Granger said you had more evidence, letters from the wives. Evelyn pulled them from her pocket, now wrinkled and water-stained but still readable. Catherine's, Margaret's, and one from a woman named Elizabeth, who I'd never heard of before last night. Hayes took them carefully. Elizabeth was his first wife, died 20 years ago of sudden illness. The doctors were paid to write it up as natural causes. He looked at the letters. These will help. Thank you. What happens now? Evelyn asked. Now we take Granger and his men to the territorial capital for trial. You 2 will need to come testify eventually, but for now, you're free to go home. Hayes paused. The debt collectors were working under false pretenses. Any money paid to them will be returned to you. The debt against Miss Mercer is void. Evelyn felt her knees go weak. It's over? Really over? For you, yes. For Granger. Hayes looked back at where Silas sat in shackles, staring at nothing. For him, it's just beginning. Evelyn ran deeper into the canyon and found Micah still hiding in the rocks, his face streaked with tears. Is it safe? He whispered. It's safe. She pulled him out and held him close. It's over, Micah. We're okay. We're all okay. The boy buried his face against her shoulder and sobbed, great heaving sobs that shook his whole body. Relief, fear, exhaustion, all of it pouring out at once. Ethan joined them, wrapping his arms around both of them. They stood there in the canyon while the marshals loaded prisoners onto horses, and Celeste sat propped against a rock, looking like she might shatter if someone touched her wrong. Eventually, Evelyn walked over to her. "You saved us," Evelyn said. Celeste managed a weak smile. "I told you I wouldn't die afraid. This seemed like a good way to make sure I didn't." "How did you know where we were?" "I didn't. I went to the Capitol 3 days ago with everything I had: letters, bank records, testimonies I'd gathered from former staff members. Convinced Marshal Hayes to investigate. We were riding back to arrest Silas when we heard the gunshots." She coughed, a wet, rattling sound. "Lucky timing." "It was more than luck. You planned this. You knew he'd come after us." "I hoped he would. I hoped he'd be stupid enough to try something public and violent. Makes the case easier." Celeste's eyes drifted to where Silas sat in chains. "He looks smaller now, doesn't he? I spent 15 years terrified of that man. Now he just looks old." "What will you do now?" Evelyn asked. "Die, probably. The doctors gave me 2 months, maybe 3. Celeste said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. "But at least I'll die knowing I did something that mattered, that I stopped him from destroying anyone else." "You did more than stop him. You saved lives. Mine, Ethan's, Micah's." "Good." Celeste closed her eyes. "Then it was worth it." One of the marshals came over. "Ma'am, we should get you back to town. You need rest." "I need a lot of things. Rest is probably the least useful." But she let him help her to her feet. She looked at Evelyn one more time. "Take care of that family of yours. And when you tell this story later, when people ask what happened, make sure they know it wasn't just one person who stopped Silas Granger. It was all of us. Every woman he hurt, every person who stayed silent, every piece of evidence we gathered. It took all of us." "I will," Evelyn promised. Celeste nodded and let the marshal lead her to a horse. Evelyn watched her ride away, this dying woman who'd found the courage to fight back when it mattered most. The marshals left with their prisoners shortly after. Evelyn, Ethan, and Micah stood in the canyon entrance and watched the dust settle. "We should go home," Ethan said finally. "Home," Micah repeated, testing the word. They rode back to the ranch in silence, too exhausted for conversation. By the time they arrived, the sun was setting and Mrs. Chen was on the porch again, waiting. "I heard shots," she said. "I thought, it's over," Evelyn said, sliding off her horse. "Really over this time." Mrs. Chen's face crumpled with relief. "Thank the heavens." That night, after Micah was asleep, Ethan and Evelyn sat on the porch steps and watched stars appear in the darkening sky. Evelyn's whole body ached. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, but she was alive. They were all alive. "What happens now?" Ethan asked. It was the same question she'd asked Marshal Hayes, but coming from Ethan, it meant something different. "I don't know," she said. "I haven't thought past surviving." "Maybe we should start thinking past it." "Maybe." Evelyn leaned against his shoulder. "What do you want to happen?" Ethan was quiet for a long time. "I want you to stay. I want us to rebuild this ranch together. I want to marry you if you'll have me. I want Micah to have a real family again. I want—" He stopped. "I want everything we almost died for to actually mean something." "It already means something." "Does it?" "We're here, aren't we? We're alive. Granger's in chains. That seems pretty meaningful." "That's not what I'm talking about." Ethan turned to look at her. "I'm talking about us. About whether what we have is real or just survival instinct. 2 desperate people clinging to each other because we didn't have anyone else." Evelyn sat up. "Is that what you think this is?" "I don't know. You tell me." "I think," Evelyn said slowly, "that survival brought us together. But what I feel for you has nothing to do with survival. I could walk away right now. The debt's gone. I'm free. I could leave tomorrow and start over somewhere else." She took his hand. "But I don't want to. I want to stay here with you and Micah and rebuild this broken-down ranch and maybe, if we're very lucky, have something that looks like happiness." "Just looks like it? Or actually is it?" "I don't know the difference anymore, do you?" Ethan pulled her close and kissed her, and for a few minutes they didn't have to figure out the difference. They could just exist in this moment, alive, together, safe. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "You already asked." "I'm asking again, properly this time. Evelyn Mercer,
"Will you marry me?" She wanted to say yes. The word was right there, ready to tumble out. But something stopped her.
"Ask me again in 3 months," she said. "Why?" "Because right now we're running on adrenaline and fear and relief that we're not dead. I want to marry you when we're thinking clearly, when we've had time to figure out who we are when we're not fighting for our lives. 3 months won't change how I feel." "Then asking again in 3 months shouldn't be a problem." Ethan smiled. "Fair enough. 3 months." The days that followed were strange, quiet, normal in a way that felt foreign after weeks of constant crisis. They fell into routines. Ethan worked on repairing the ranch, fences that needed mending, buildings that needed shoring up, 1,000 small tasks that had been neglected. Evelyn handled the house and started a proper garden. Micah followed them both around, talking more each day, his vocabulary expanding like a flower opening to sunlight. News filtered in slowly. Silas Granger's trial was set for late autumn in the territorial capital. The bearded debt collector and his associates had all confessed in exchange for lighter sentences. The money Ethan had paid them was being returned, all of it, plus compensation for damages. Celeste Granger died 3 weeks after the arrest. Evelyn got the news from Marshal Hayes in a letter that also said Celeste had left instructions for her funeral. No flowers, no tears, and absolutely no one was to say she was taken too soon. She was ready, the letter said. She'd done what she needed to do. Evelyn cried anyway. Summer deepened into something hot and dry. The ranch slowly came back to life. Ethan hired 2 ranch hands to help with the cattle. Evelyn started teaching Micah his letters at the kitchen table. They had dinner together every night, the 3 of them, talking about small things, what they'd done that day, what needed doing tomorrow. It was normal. It was boring. It was wonderful. 6 weeks after the canyon, Evelyn woke in the middle of the night to find Micah standing in her doorway.
"Bad dream?" she asked.
He nodded. "Come here." He climbed into bed beside her, and she held him while he told her about the dream. Something about being chased through darkness, about losing people he loved, about being alone. "You're not alone," Evelyn said. "You'll never be alone again. You have me and your father and this ranch and everyone in it. We're your family." "Promise?" There was that word again. Promise. "I promise," she said. And this time she meant it. This time she could keep it. Micah fell asleep in her arms. Evelyn lay awake, listening to him breathe, feeling the weight of him against her side. This was what she'd been fighting for. Not survival, not freedom from debt. This child who trusted her, this family she'd stumbled into, this life she'd built from the wreckage of everything that came before. In the morning, Ethan found them both asleep in her bed, Micah curled against her like a puppy. "This is becoming a habit," Ethan said. "Is that a problem?" "No." He sat on the edge of the bed. "I like it, actually. Seeing you 2 together. It's good." Micah woke up and immediately started talking about his dream, telling his father the same story he'd told Evelyn, adding details he'd forgotten the first time. Ethan listened patiently, asking questions, taking it seriously in the way children needed their fears taken seriously. "You know what helps with bad dreams?" Ethan said when Micah finished. "What?" "Pancakes." Micah's face lit up. "Really?" "Absolutely. It's scientifically proven. Come on, I'll teach you how to make them." They went to the kitchen together. Evelyn followed a few minutes later and found them covered in flour, arguing about how much milk to add to the batter. "You're both wrong," she said. "You need twice as much as that." "See?" Micah said to his father. "I told you." They made a huge mess and burned the first 3 pancakes and laughed so hard Evelyn got a stitch in her side. It was perfect. After breakfast, while Micah was outside playing, Ethan pulled Evelyn aside. "I got a letter yesterday," he said, "from the territorial prosecutor's office. They want us to testify at Granger's trial." "When?" 6 weeks from now. They'll cover our travel expenses, put us up in a hotel, pay us for our time." "Do we have to go?" "They can't force us, but—" Ethan hesitated. "I think we should. I think we owe it to Celeste, to Catherine and Margaret and Elizabeth, to every woman he hurt." Evelyn knew he was right. But the thought of seeing Silas Granger again, even in shackles, even in a courtroom, made her stomach turn. "What about Micah?" she asked.
Mrs. Chen can watch him, or we bring him with us. Either way, we figure it out.
6 weeks.
Yeah. Evelyn thought about it, about standing in front of a courtroom and telling her story, about facing down the man who'd tried to own her, to destroy her. Okay, she said. We'll go.
The 6 weeks passed faster than she expected. The ranch kept them busy, always something that needed fixing, always another problem to solve. But it was good work, honest work, the kind that left you tired but satisfied at the end of the day. Micah was reading now, slowly but steadily. He'd found some of his mother's old books and worked through them page by page, asking Evelyn about words he didn't know. His favorite was a collection of frontier tales about cowboys and outlaws and brave deeds. He made Evelyn read it to him every night before bed. "Do you think we're like them?" he asked one evening. "Like the people in the stories?" "What do you mean?" "Brave. Do you think we're brave?" Evelyn considered this. "I think we did what we had to do. I'm not sure that's the same as being brave." "It sounds the same to me." "Maybe it is then." The night before they were supposed to leave for the capital, Ethan came to Evelyn's room after Micah was asleep. "We should talk," he said. "About what?"
About the trial. About what we're going to say. About, he ran a hand through his hair, about the fact that when we get up there and tell our story, everyone in that courtroom is going to know you were sold at auction, that you were treated like property. That's going to be public record forever. I know. And you're okay with that?
Evelyn thought about it, about the shame she'd felt standing on that platform in chains, about how that shame had slowly transformed into anger, then into determination, then into something else entirely. "I'm not ashamed anymore," she said. "What happened to me was wrong, but I survived it. I'm here. That's not shameful. That's—" She searched for the word. "That's proof that they didn't break me. Let it be public record. Let everyone know what men like Silas Granger do to women. Maybe someone else will see it and find the courage to fight back." Ethan looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time all over again. "You're remarkable. I'm tired and scared and I don't want to do this, but I'm going to anyway." That's what remarkable looks like. They left at dawn with Micah between them on the wagon. The capital was a week's journey north, through mountains and high desert and country so beautiful it hurt to look at. They camped under stars and cooked over open fires and told stories to keep Micah entertained. It almost felt like an adventure instead of a trip to testify at a murder trial. They reached the capital on a Sunday afternoon. The city was bigger than anything Evelyn had ever seen. Real streets, real buildings, people everywhere. Micah pressed against her side, overwhelmed. "It's loud," he said. "Very loud," Evelyn agreed. They found the hotel the prosecutor's office had arranged, a modest place near the courthouse. Their room had 2 beds and a window overlooking a busy street. Micah immediately claimed the bed near the window. That evening, the prosecutor came to meet with them. His name was Benjamin Cartwright, and he looked exactly like what Evelyn imagined a prosecutor would look like. Serious, organized, carrying a leather satchel stuffed with papers. "Thank you for coming," he said, sitting down across from them. "I know this isn't easy." "What do you need from us?" Ethan asked. "The truth. Simple and clear. I'll ask you questions, and you answer them honestly. Don't embellish, don't speculate. Just tell me what you saw, what you experienced, what you know to be fact." "What about the letters?" Evelyn asked. "We have them. They're strong evidence, but I need you to explain how you obtained them, why you were at Granger's estate that night, what happened afterward." He pulled out a notebook. "Let's start from the beginning. Miss Mercer, when did you first encounter Silas Granger?" They talked for 2 hours. Cartwright took notes, asked clarifying questions, had them repeat certain details. When he finally left, Evelyn felt wrung out. "That wasn't so bad," Ethan said. "That was the easy part. The trial is going to be worse." She was right. The trial started on Tuesday morning in a courtroom packed with spectators. Evelyn hadn't expected the crowd, hadn't thought that many people would care about a rich rancher accused of murdering his wives. But the courtroom was standing room only. Silas Granger sat at the defense table looking smaller than she remembered, grayer, older. He didn't look at her when she walked in, didn't acknowledge her existence at all. The trial lasted 3 days. Evelyn testified on the 2nd day, Ethan on the 3rd. She told her story, the auction, the debt collectors, the threats, breaking into Granger's estate, finding the letters. She spoke clearly and calmly, even though her hands were shaking. Granger's defense attorney tried to rattle her during cross-examination, suggesting she'd fabricated evidence, that she was a bitter woman seeking revenge for imagined slights. "Is it true you were sold at auction to settle your brother's debts?" the attorney asked. "Yes." "And is it true Mr. Granger was the highest bidder before Mr. Hale intervened?" "Yes." "So you had reason to be upset with my client." "I had reason to be grateful I didn't end up belonging to a murderer. If you want to call that upset, go ahead." Some people in the courtroom laughed. The judge banged his gavel. When Evelyn stepped down from the witness stand, her legs were trembling, but her head was high. She'd done it. She'd told the truth. Whatever happened now was out of her hands. Ethan testified about the debt collectors, about the threats against Micah, about the night in the canyon when federal marshals had saved their lives. He was steady, incredible, and furious in a quiet, controlled way that made every word hit harder. On the fourth day, the jury deliberated for 6 hours. They came back with a verdict just before sunset, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. People shouted, cried, cheered. The judge banged his gavel over and over, trying to restore order. Silas Granger sat perfectly still, staring at the table in front of him like he couldn't quite process what had just happened. Sentencing was set for the following week: death by hanging. Evelyn walked out of the courtroom into the cool evening air and took the first full breath she'd taken in days. "It's really over," she said. "It's really over," Ethan confirmed. Micah, who'd been waiting with a court clerk during the testimony, ran over and grabbed both their hands. "Did we win?" he asked. "We won," Evelyn said. They stayed in the Capitol for the sentencing hearing, watched Silas Granger stand before the judge and receive his sentence without expression, without plea for mercy, watched him be led away in chains to await execution. Marshal Hayes found them afterward outside the courthouse. "Thank you," he said. "Both of you. None of this would have happened without your courage." "It was Celeste's courage," Evelyn said. "We just helped." "She'd be glad to know it worked, that he's paying for what he did." Hayes tipped his hat. "Safe travels back home." They left the Capitol the next morning and headed south. The journey back felt different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. They took their time, stopping to let Micah explore interesting rocks or chase lizards or just enjoy the landscape. One evening, camped by a stream with mountains purple in the distance, Ethan asked, "Are you happy?" Evelyn considered the question. "I don't know if happy is the right word. Content, maybe? Relieved. Hopeful. Hopeful's good. What about you?" "I'm getting there." He poked at the fire with a stick. "For the first time since Sarah died, I can imagine a future that doesn't look like just surviving, that looks like actually living." "Because of the trial?" "Because of you." He looked at her across the flames. "It's been almost 3 months, you know, since I asked you to marry me." "I know. So I'm asking again. Will you marry me, Evelyn Mercer?" She smiled. "Ask me when we get home." "Why?" "But because I want to say yes, standing on that ranch where we built something real, where we fought for each other, where we became a family." "That's a yes then." "That's a ask me when we get home." They reached the ranch 5 days later, dusty and tired, and so ready to be home they could taste it. Mrs. Chen had kept everything running in their absence. The chickens fed, the garden watered, the house clean. "Any trouble?" Ethan asked. "None. It's been quiet. Peaceful, even." That night, after dinner, after Micah was asleep, Ethan found Evelyn on the porch watching the sunset. "We're home," he said. "We are. So I'm asking, Evelyn Mercer, will you marry me?" She turned to face him. This man who'd risked everything to save her, who'd fought beside her, protected her, loved her even when she didn't think she deserved it. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He kissed her there on the porch while the sun sank below the horizon and painted the sky gold and red and purple. When they pulled apart, both of them were crying. "When?" he asked. "Soon, before winter. I want Micah to be part of it. I want everyone who helped us to be there. I want it to be real and public and permanent." Done. They planned the wedding for early October before the weather turned. Word spread fast through the territory. The schoolteacher who'd been sold at auction was marrying the rancher who'd saved her, and everyone was invited. People came from everywhere, neighbors from miles around, townspeople from Redstone Hollow, many of them looking ashamed, some bringing gifts as if that could make up for watching Evelyn suffer without helping. Mrs. Chen came with her whole family. Even Marshal Hayes rode down from the capital. They held the ceremony outside on the ranch, under the open sky. Micah stood between them, holding the rings, so proud he looked like he might burst. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, Micah piped up with, "If anyone says no, I'll fight them," which made everyone laugh. Evelyn wore a dress Mrs. Chen had helped her sew. Nothing fancy, just simple blue fabric that fit her properly. Ethan wore his best suit, the one he'd borrowed for Granger's trial and then bought afterward. They said their vows in front of everyone, promised to love each other, to fight for each other, to build a life together. When the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," Ethan kissed her like it was the first time and the last time all at once. The celebration lasted until past midnight. People ate and danced and told stories. Micah fell asleep in Evelyn's arms around 10 o'clock, and she carried him inside and tucked him into bed. When she came back out, Ethan was waiting. "Happy?" he asked. "Happy," she confirmed. They stood together on the porch and watched their wedding party continue without them. Watched people who'd become friends, who'd become family, celebrate this moment they'd all fought to make possible. "I love you," Ethan said. "I love you too." It was real. It was permanent. It was theirs. And for the first time in her life, Evelyn Mercer, now Evelyn Hale, felt like she'd found the place she was always meant to be. The morning after the wedding, Evelyn woke to find Micah sitting on the floor beside her bed, watching her sleep. "How long have you been there, T?" she asked, her voice still rough with sleep. "I don't know. A while." He was holding the wooden horse Ethan had carved, turning it over in his hands. "I wanted to make sure you were still here." Evelyn sat up and reached for him. He climbed onto the bed and curled against her side, the way he'd done that first night when the thunderstorm had terrified him. "I'm here," she said. "I'm always going to be here." "But Mama said that too." And then she wasn't. The words hit Evelyn harder than they should have. She'd known Micah carried his mother's death like a stone in his chest. But hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Your mama didn't choose to leave you," Evelyn said carefully. "She got sick. She couldn't help it." "I know." Micah's voice was small. "But you could still leave. You could decide you don't want to be here anymore." "Is that what you're afraid of?" He nodded against her shoulder. Evelyn thought about how to answer this. She could promise she'd never leave, but she'd learned that promises about the future were just pretty lies unless you could back them up with action. Words were cheap. What mattered was what you did every single day. "I can't promise I'll never die," she said finally. "Nobody can promise that, but I can promise that as long as I'm alive, I'm choosing to be here with you every single day. Even on the hard days when things are terrible and I'm tired and frustrated, even then, I'm choosing you." "Why?" "Because you're worth choosing. Because you make me better. Because somewhere along the way you stopped being Ethan's son and became mine too." Micah lifted his head to look at her. His eyes were wet. "Really? Really? If you'll have me. Can I call you Mama?" Evelyn's throat tightened. She'd been expecting this question eventually, had been preparing herself for it, but now that it was here, she wasn't prepared at all. "What about your real mama?" she asked. "Sarah, don't you think she'd want me to be happy?" Micah said it with the certainty only children have. "She told me that, right before she died. She said, 'Be happy, Micah.' So if calling you Mama makes me happy, she'd want me to." Evelyn pulled him close and let herself cry, something she rarely did, something she'd trained herself not to do. But this moment felt too big to hold inside. "Yes," she whispered. "You can call me Mama." "Mama," Micah tested the word. Then again, louder. "Mama, I'm right here, baby." They stayed like that until Ethan appeared in the doorway, looking rumpled and half asleep. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's perfect," Evelyn said. "Micah and I were just talking." Ethan looked at his son's tear-stained face, at Evelyn's watery smile, and seemed to understand without being told what had just happened. "Come here, buddy," he said. Micah scrambled over to him, and Ethan scooped him up, even though the boy was really too big to be carried anymore. You know what today is? Ethan asked, the day after the wedding. It's the first day of the rest of our lives, and I think we should celebrate. How? Pancakes, the really terrible ones we make that always burn. Micah laughed. Those are the best kind. They went to the kitchen together, all three of them, and made a mess of flour and eggs and milk. The pancakes were indeed terrible, half-burned, lopsided, completely inedible. They ate them anyway, drowning them in honey and laughing so hard Evelyn got hiccups. This was family, Evelyn thought, not the perfect version people pretended to have. The real version, messy and imperfect, and held together by choice rather than obligation. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm. Ethan worked the ranch with his hired hands, bringing in the last of the autumn harvest. Evelyn divided her time between household work and something new, teaching. Word had spread that the former schoolteacher was now married and settled, and parents started bringing their children by, asking if she'd tutor them. Just an hour or two a week, they said. Their kids needed help with reading, with writing, with ciphering. Evelyn started small. 3 students, meeting twice a week in the ranch house kitchen, then 5 students, then 8. By November, she had 12 children of various ages showing up every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, and she'd had to move the lessons to the barn because they didn't fit in the kitchen anymore. "You're starting a school," Ethan observed one evening, watching her prepare lessons by lamplight. "I'm just teaching a few kids. You've got 12 students and a waiting list. That's a school. It's not official. Does it need to be?" Evelyn thought about this. "I don't know. Maybe. If we're going to do this properly, we should have a real building. Desks, books, supplies. That costs money. I know." She chewed on the end of her pencil. "But maybe we could save up, or ask for donations, or we could use the compensation money from the trial." Evelyn looked up. "What?" "The prosecutor said the territorial government was awarding you compensation for what you went through. $2,000. It came in last week. I was going to tell you, but we've been busy with the wedding and everything else." Ethan pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. "It's yours. You decide what to do with it." Evelyn stared at the envelope. $2,000. Enough to build a real school. Enough to make a difference. "We could use some of it for the ranch," she said. "You need a new barn roof. And the fences, the ranch will survive. This money is yours, Evelyn. What do you want to do with it?" What did she want? A month ago, she would have said security, safety, protection against whatever disaster might come next. But standing here in this ranch house with her husband and her son asleep upstairs and 12 students counting on her to teach them, she wanted something different. She wanted to build something that would outlast her. "I want to build a school," she said, "a real one, where any child can come learn, regardless of whether their parents can pay, where girls get the same education as boys, where nobody gets turned away." Ethan smiled. "Then let's build a school." They broke ground in December, on a plot of land at the edge of the ranch property where the main road ran past. Neighbors came to help, the same people who'd come to the wedding, plus others who'd heard what was happening and wanted to be part of it. The school took 3 months to build. It wasn't fancy, just one room with windows on all sides, a wood stove for heat, benches instead of desks until they could afford better. But it was solid and clean and filled with light. Evelyn painted the sign herself. "Redstone School, all welcome." They opened in March on a cold morning with snow still clinging to the shadows. 23 students showed up that first day, more than Evelyn had taught in her old school in town. Children from ranches, from Redstone Hollow, from places so remote their families traveled 2 hours each way just to get there. Evelyn stood at the front of the room and looked at their faces, eager, nervous, hopeful, and felt something settle into place inside her chest. This was what she'd been fighting for, not just her own survival, not just her own happiness, but the chance to make sure other people had opportunities she'd had to fight for. "Welcome," she said. "My name is Mrs. Hale, and this is our school. Our rules are simple. Work hard, be kind, and never let anyone tell you what you're capable of. You decide that for yourselves." The students stared at her. Then a girl in the back, maybe 9 years old, with braids and a patched dress, raised her hand. "Yes?" Evelyn said. "My papa says girls don't need to learn ciphering. Says it's a waste." "What do you think?" The girl considered this. "I think if I can't cipher, I can't run my own business someday. And I want to run my own business." Then you'll learn ciphering. Anyone else have something they've been told they can't learn? Hands went up all over the room. Boys who'd been told they were too poor for education. Girls who'd been told they should focus on housework. A boy with a stutter who'd been told he was too stupid to read. Evelyn listened to each one. Then she said, "In this school, the only person who decides what you can learn is you. We're going to work hard, and some days it's going to be frustrating, and you're going to want to quit. But if you show up and try, I promise you'll surprise yourself with what you're capable of." She meant every word. That first year of teaching was harder than anything she'd done on the ranch. Students came at different levels. Some couldn't read at all. Others were reading books meant for children twice their age. Some understood numbers instinctively. Others struggled to count past 10. Evelyn learned to teach 3 different lessons simultaneously, to create assignments that challenged advanced students while supporting struggling ones, to find ways to make learning feel like discovery rather than drudgery. At home, she collapsed into bed every night exhausted. But it was a good exhaustion, the kind that came from doing something that mattered. Micah thrived in the school environment. He'd always been smart, but surrounded by other children his age, he bloomed. He helped younger students with their reading, challenged older students to races solving math problems, and generally appointed himself Evelyn's unofficial assistant. "He's going to be a teacher someday," Ethan said one evening, watching Micah help a struggling 6-year-old sound out words. "Maybe, or maybe he'll be a rancher like you, or something completely different. The point is, he'll have choices. Because of you. Because of all of us." Evelyn leaned against Ethan's shoulder. "Because we fought for those choices. Because we didn't give up." Summer arrived with heat that turned the schoolroom into an oven. Evelyn shortened the school day, starting earlier when it was cooler. Students brought water from home in jars and jugs. They learned to read in the shade outside when the building became unbearable. In June, a woman arrived at the school asking to speak with Evelyn. She was young, maybe 20, with bruises on her arms she tried to hide with long sleeves despite the heat. "Can I help you?" Evelyn asked. "I heard about you," the woman said quietly. "About what happened to you at the auction. How you survived." She took a shaky breath. "I need help. My husband, he hurts me, and I don't know what to do." Evelyn felt something crack open inside her chest. She'd known this would happen eventually, known that her story would reach women in similar situations, women who needed help she wasn't sure she could provide. But she could try. "Come inside, Gitas," Evelyn said. "Let's talk." The woman's name was Anna. Her husband was a miner who drank his pay and used his fists when the whiskey made him mean. She had 2 children, both under 5. She wanted to leave but had nowhere to go, no money, no skills that could support her. Evelyn listened to the whole story. Then she said, "You can stay here, at the ranch, just until you figure out your next move." "I can't pay you." "I don't need payment. I need you to be safe." Anna stayed in the small room Evelyn had first occupied when she'd arrived at the ranch. Her children, a boy and a girl, were quiet and jumpy, the way children get when they've learned to be invisible. Ethan didn't question it when he came home and found 3 extra people at his dinner table. He just set extra plates and helped cut the little boy's meat into manageable pieces. "How long are they staying?" he asked Evelyn later when Anna and the children were asleep. "I don't know. As long as they need to. And if her husband comes looking, then we deal with it." "Evelyn, I know it's asking a lot. I know it's potentially dangerous. But what was I supposed to do? Turn her away? Let her go back to a man who beats her?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "No, you couldn't do that. I wouldn't want you to." He took her hand. "But we need to be smart about this. If her husband shows up, we can't just shoot him. We need to go through proper channels." "What proper channels? The law doesn't care about women who get beaten by their husbands." "Maybe not yet, but we can make them care. We can document what happened, get statements, build a case, do it the way we did with Granger. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was better than nothing." Anna stayed for 3 weeks. In that time, Evelyn helped her write a formal complaint against her husband, gather testimony from neighbors who'd witnessed the abuse, and file for legal separation, something that was almost unheard of in the territory but technically possible under the right circumstances. When Anna's husband did show up, drunk and furious, Ethan and 2 ranch hands were ready. They didn't touch him, didn't threaten him. just stood there with rifles and told him to leave. He left. The legal proceedings took months, but eventually Anna won her separation. She moved to Silver Ridge with her children and found work in a boarding house. She wrote to Evelyn every few weeks, updates on her life, thanks for the help. And she told other women in similar situations, women who needed a safe place to go. By autumn, Evelyn had helped 4 different women escape abusive marriages. The ranch became known as a place where women could find refuge, at least temporarily, where they could catch their breath and figure out their next move. "You're starting a pattern," Ethan observed. "Is that a problem?" "No. But you should make it official. Set up a proper system. Make sure everyone knows what we're doing and why." So Evelyn did. She wrote letters to magistrates and territorial officials explaining what she was doing. She reached out to churches and community organizations asking for support. She created a network of safe houses across the territory, places where women could go if the ranch was too far or too dangerous. Not everyone supported her. Some people said she was destroying families. Others said she was interfering in private matters. A few threatened her outright. But more people supported her than opposed her. Donations came in, money, supplies, food. Women volunteered to help, offering their homes as temporary shelters. Men who'd lost sisters or mothers or daughters to violence quietly contributed funds. It wasn't a perfect system. Some women went back to their abusers. Some situations couldn't be fixed with paperwork and safe houses. But Evelyn helped where she could, and she didn't apologize for it. 2 years after the wedding, on a crisp October morning, Evelyn woke to find Micah sitting at the kitchen table writing a letter. "What are you working on?" she asked. "An essay, for school, about what it means to be brave." "What are you saying?" Micah read aloud. "I think being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the thing anyway. My mama was sold at auction and could have given up, but she didn't. She fought back and won. That's brave." Evelyn's eyes burned. "Micah, is it good?" "It's perfect." He went back to writing. Evelyn watched him, this boy who'd been mute and terrified when she first met him, now writing essays about courage. She thought about how far they'd all come, from that auction platform to this kitchen table, from survival to something that looked like joy. That winter, news came that Silas Granger had been executed, hanged at dawn in the territorial capital, witnessed by a crowd of hundreds. Evelyn heard about it from Marshall Hayes, who wrote to say justice had been served, and she could finally put that chapter behind her. She didn't feel the relief she expected, just a kind of sad exhaustion that came from knowing a life had ended, even a terrible one. "Do you think we're supposed to feel happy about it?" she asked Ethan. "I don't know. I just feel tired." "Me too." They stood together in the barn where Evelyn still taught classes twice a week, looking at the rows of empty benches waiting for tomorrow's students. "Do you ever regret it?" Evelyn asked. "Bidding on me that day? Taking on all of this?" Ethan turned to look at her. "Never. Not once. Not even on the worst days." He took her hand. "You gave me my son back. You gave me a reason to keep fighting. You gave me—" He stopped. "You gave me everything. I didn't do it alone. No. We did it together. That's the point." He pulled her close. "We built something here. Not just a ranch or a school or a refuge for women who need help. We built a life. A real one. The kind worth fighting for." Evelyn thought about Celeste Granger, dying but determined to fight back one last time. About Catherine and Margaret and Elizabeth, who'd tried to escape and failed. About all the women who'd come through the ranch seeking safety. She thought about the students in her school, learning to read and write and believe in their own capabilities. She thought about Micah, calling her mama, growing up knowing he was loved. "We did, didn't we?" she said. "Built something worth fighting for, and we're not done yet." He was right. There was still so much to do, more students to teach, more women to help, more fights to win. But for the first time in her life, Evelyn wasn't fighting just to survive. She was fighting to build, to create, to make the world a little better than it had been. 3 years after this wedding, the school had 47 students and 2 additional teachers Evelyn had hired to help manage the load. The Refuge Network had helped 23 women escape dangerous situations. The ranch was thriving, profitable for the first time since Sarah's death. Micah was 10 now, reading books that challenged Evelyn's own comprehension. helping teach younger students, talking about maybe becoming a doctor someday. Evelyn was teaching a class one afternoon when a stranger appeared in the doorway. A woman in her 30s, well-dressed, with a notebook in her hands. "Mrs. Hale?" the woman asked. "That's me?" "My name is Eleanor Price. I'm a reporter for the Western Gazette. I'm writing a piece about women who've survived extraordinary circumstances and used their experiences to help others. I'd like to interview you, if you're willing." Evelyn's first instinct was to say no. She didn't want to be a story, didn't want to be held up as some kind of example. But then she thought about all the women who might read that article. Women in situations like hers had been. Women who needed to know they weren't alone. "All right," she said. "Let's talk." The interview lasted 2 hours. Evelyn told her story, not all of it, not the worst parts, but enough to convey what she'd been through and how she'd survived. She talked about the school, about the refuge network, about her belief that surviving wasn't enough if you didn't use that survival to help others. "Do you consider yourself a hero?" Eleanor asked. "No, I consider myself someone who refused to stay broken. There's a difference." What would you say to other women in similar situations? Evelyn thought about this carefully. "I'd say you're stronger than you think. I'd say asking for help isn't weakness. I'd say the people who hurt you want you to believe you're powerless, but you're not. You have choices, even when it doesn't feel like it. And there are people who will help you if you let them." The article came out 6 weeks later, accompanied by a sketch of Evelyn standing in front of the school. It was a good piece, honest without being exploitative, hopeful without being naive. Letters started arriving, dozens of them. Women thanking Evelyn for sharing her story, women asking for help, women offering to volunteer or donate or start similar programs in their own communities. Evelyn answered every single letter. It took months, but she did it. One letter stood out from the rest. It was from a woman named Sarah, not Ethan Sarah, a different one, who wrote, "I was sold to settle my father's debts 3 years ago. I thought my life was over. Then I read your story and realized it was just beginning. I escaped. I'm building a new life. Thank you for showing me it was possible." Evelyn read that letter 3 times, then put it in a box with the others she was keeping. Proof that telling her story mattered, that surviving mattered, that fighting back mattered. 5 years after the wedding, Evelyn stood in the schoolyard watching Micah graduate from the program she'd built. He was 13 now, tall and confident, ready to move on to advanced studies in the territorial capital. "I'm scared," he admitted the night before he left. "Of what?" "Of leaving. Of being away from you and Papa. Of messing up." "You're going to mess up," Evelyn said. "Everyone does. The question is what you do after you mess up. Do you give up or do you keep trying?" "Keep trying. Then you'll be fine." He left on a Wednesday morning, riding off with a group of students heading to the capital for school. Evelyn watched until he disappeared over the horizon, then went inside and cried for an hour. "He'll be back," Ethan said, holding her. "I know, but he's growing up. Soon he won't need us anymore." "That's the point, isn't it? We raise them so they can leave, so they can build their own lives." Evelyn knew he was right, but that didn't make it hurt less. The years continued to pass. The school grew. The refuge network expanded to cover half the territory. Evelyn trained other women to do the work she'd started, creating a system that could survive without her constant attention. She and Ethan grew older together. Gray hair, laugh lines, bodies that protested the hard work more than they used to. But they were happy. Not perfect. They still fought sometimes, still struggled with money and worry and all the normal challenges of life. But they were together, and that made everything else manageable. Micah came home from the capital with a medical degree and a wife, a sharp-tongued woman named Clara, who took one look at the ranch and immediately started suggesting improvements. She fit right in. He opened a medical practice in Redstone Hollow, treating people who couldn't afford doctors, accepting payment in whatever form they could offer, eggs, labor, vegetables from gardens. He was his mother's son in the best possible way. Evelyn was 62 years old when she decided to retire from teaching. Her eyes were going bad, her hands shook too much to write on the blackboard, and the young teachers she'd trained were frankly better at it than she was anymore. On her last day, the students threw her a party. 40 years of students, now adults with children of their own, came back to celebrate. The schoolroom overflowed with people, with stories, with laughter. "What are you going to do now?" one former student asked. "Rest," Evelyn said, "and write. I think I might write a book." "About what?" "About everything. About survival and choice and the difference between the two. About building something from nothing. About refusing to stay broken." She did write the book. It took 3 years and filled 200 pages with stories, hers and others, woven together into something that felt true. She didn't soften the hard parts, didn't pretend everything worked out perfectly, just told the truth as best she could. The book was published when she was 65. It sold modestly at first, then picked up momentum as women shared it with each other, as communities used it as a teaching tool, as people recognized their own struggles in her words. Evelyn received letters from readers all over the country. Women who'd escaped bad situations, women who'd built new lives, women who'd helped other women do the same. She answered every letter she could, until her hands hurt too much to hold a pen anymore. Then Clara helped her dictate responses, and later, when even that became too difficult, Clara answered on her behalf. Evelyn was 73 when Ethan died. His heart, the doctor said, quick and painless. He'd been mending a fence one moment, gone the next. She buried him on the ranch, under the cottonwood tree where they'd stood during their wedding. Micah and Clara were there, grandchildren she'd helped raise, students she'd taught, women she'd helped. "He was a good man," Micah said. "He was," Evelyn agreed. "He saved my life. Not just at that auction, every day after. He saved my life by choosing to build one with me." She lived another 4 years after Ethan's death, watched her grandchildren grow, watched her school expand into 3 buildings, watched the Refuge Network become an official organization with funding and staff and a real infrastructure. On her last day, a cold morning in January, she sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, looking out at the land she and Ethan had fought to keep. Micah sat beside her. "Do you have regrets?" he asked. Evelyn thought about this, about the auction platform, and the chains, and the blood on her face. About Silas Granger and debt collectors and running through the night. About all the hard things, all the terrible things. "No," she said, "I don't regret any of it, because all of it, even the worst parts, led me here. To you, to this family, to this life we built." She took his hand. "That's what I want people to remember. Not that I survived something terrible, but that I took that terrible thing and turned it into something good." "They'll remember," Micah promised. "I'll make sure of it." She died that afternoon, peacefully, with her son holding her hand. Years later, travelers passing through the territory would still stop at the ranch and ask about the woman who'd been sold at auction and built a school, about the teacher who'd helped dozens of women escape violence, about the writer whose book had changed lives. The stories varied in the telling. Some made Evelyn sound like a saint, others made her sound like a warrior. The truth was somewhere in between. She was just a woman who'd refused to accept the life others tried to force on her, who'd fought for something better, not just for herself, but for everyone who came after. The school still stood, now called Evelyn Hale Memorial School. The Refuge Network still operated, helping women across 3 territories. Her book was still in print, still being read, still changing minds. And on the ranch, under the cottonwood tree, 2 graves lay side by side. Ethan and Evelyn Hale. Married 48 years. Survived by 1 son, 4 grandchildren, 8 great-grandchildren, and countless lives they'd touched. The markers were simple, just their names and dates. But if you look closely, you could see words carved underneath Evelyn's name. She chose to fight. She chose to build. She chose to live. That was her legacy. Not survival. Not victory. But choice. The choice to believe she deserved better. The choice to fight for it. The choice to use what she'd survived to help others survive too. Because in the end, that's what mattered. Not what had been done to her, but what she'd done with it. She'd taken the worst moment of her life and turned it into the foundation of something beautiful. She'd taken pain and built purpose. She'd taken chains and forged freedom. And in doing so, she'd proved something important, something that echoed long after her death, carried forward by every woman who read her story and recognized herself in it. You could be sold like property and still claim your own life. You could be beaten down and still stand back up. You could lose everything and still build something worth having. You could survive. And then, this was the part that mattered most. You could choose to do more than survive. You could choose to live.